Two. Check. 2, hello. Check. Hey folks. Hello. How's it going? How are you doing? Me. Me. Rob. I'm doing okay, regime pilled. I'm doing okay. I just had for my lunch, you know, it's like I was at the grocery store and those like frozen burritos. Those frozen burritos from the grocery store, they're just never good. And sometimes when you're in the grocery store, you can talk yourself into them. Like, I'm sure, oh, these will be all right. They're not good. They're never good. Better now that I know we're closing the northern borders. Good. Actually, I'm better because of that reason. I'm better. Gonna keep out all the damn Yankees. Not that Orb Lady's a Yankee. We like it more, actually, so... Yeah, those frozen burritos, though. Not good. I just had a couple of those for lunch, and it was didn't taste good. Was not satisfying. Just not enjoyable in any way, you know? Really just a big miss. Not a great lunch today. I had a couple of ideas. I'll still eat that garbage. I had a couple of ideas for something better that I could have, but I was like, you know what, this is going to save time. It's going to save time. I'll just heat up some of this trash. I'll just eat some of this trash. That'll be okay. But it wasn't, though. It was not okay. Did I microwave it? No, I actually put it in the air fryer, but I thought maybe that would be better, but I think it made it worse. Because it made it all like crispy, the outside. I think at least if you're going to eat one of those frozen burritos, I think you kind of have to do it in the microwave so it's like mushy. The crispiness was not enjoyable. I thought maybe that would improve the whole thing, but it really did not. It should be soft and supple. Yeah, no, it was awful, honestly, Sean. It was not good. It was really not good. And as you know, I'm someone that prides myself. I pride myself on being able to prepare some pretty delicious food sometimes. It's no pogo in the air fryer. For sure, yeah. I mean, that's great. Putting cheese or queso on it, that would definitely improve it, but not the crispiness, I don't think. And it's like somehow it's somehow like not hot enough, but also burning your mouth at the same time. Is 10:40 a.m. too early for a Diet Coke? Absolutely not. No. No. I'll have a morning Coke sometimes, not very often. I prefer having coffee in the morning, but I'll have a morning Coke sometimes if I'm out of coffee. You know? And you really need to like get going. You need a little caffeine hit. All bets are off at that point. White chorizo queso from HEB. What's HEB? Is that some fancy like Southern grocery store. Probably with some queso, it would have been not bad. HEB's a Texas grocery chain. Good. Texas. Hello, Netlocked. What's up? Apparently, HEB was originally called CC Butt Grocery Store. Is that true? CC Butt. I see. The B does stand for butt. So the B in HEB, the B is butt. What's the H in the E? PP butt. There we go. Let's get this started off with some very mature commentary. Come on down to CC Butts. Hooah! I'm sorry to hear you have COVID, Netlocked. Things are going okay over here. The stream yesterday was pretty successful, launching Unrigged. That was a lot of fun. We had the Raptors game last night was not good. The Raptors vibe so far this season has been a real roller coaster. It's been there's no medium vibes with the Raptors this year. It's either really toxic, rancid vibes or really excellent vibes. There's no real in between. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub. Yeah, the Bulls don't seem like they're really going anywhere this year either. Apparently, there's talk of trading Zach LaVine. Very much enjoyed watching The Prestige last night. The Prestige was very fun. Really enjoyed watching that with some first timers. Sean, did you go down the Reddit rabbit hole on that? Just two angry dudes rocking. That's right. I stayed up late pondering your theory of the woman figured it out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that seems pretty clear. That was very enjoyable, though. Also, Michael Caine says everything outright several times, for sure. I don't want to get into spoilers in case anyone's like planning on watching it and hasn't seen it. Maybe I shouldn't even talk about this. I don't know. Just the way that certain things are really, when you watch it the second time, it's so obvious. It's like they're just beating you on the head with it. They're just beating you over the head with it over and over and over again. And you watch it through for the second time, and you're just like, oh my God, how did I not put that together? You almost feel stupid afterwards. But that's cool. That's what the cool thing about that movie is. The whole thing is like a magic trick. It's all this like big misdirection. And then in the end, there's this like ta-da moment. It's nice. And then, like we were talking about after, there's a whole kind of like other level to it, that the kind of hidden real reality of it, the hidden story. It is the one with the Bowie Tesla. That's right. Bowie Tesla is really cool. And Andy Serkis is his assistant. There's almost nothing they say that isn't foreshadowing. Yeah, it's really something. Nolan really comes. He does everything but like come appear on the screen and tell you what the ending to the movie is going to be. Like he does everything right up to that point. That's what the kids call a tight script. That's right. Absolutely. And I really like it's a really, I talked in the Discord server last night, the whole thing, like using the wrestling analogy, the whole thing is like a double turn a little bit. You start off thinking the protagonist is one person, and then by the end it's kind of switched. It's so funny that I was ready to hate Patrick Bateman. I was in an aggro mood. Well, that's what they steer you towards that. Yeah, we talked about The Illusionist last night. I've never seen The Illusionist. Pretty decent cast though. It's got Edward Norton. It's got Paul Giamatti. Really recommend giving it another watch, Takadu. And it was really fun last night watching it. Hello, Gald Greek. What's up? Husker, howdy, hello. Ahoy, hoy. So yeah, a lot to catch up on today. Tonight I'm going out to the unrigged sort of launch thing. That should be fun. It's almost the weekend coming up, Chad. Anyone have any weekend plans? It happens a lot because Hollywood is an incestuous, weird cesspool where people go to parties and steal each other's ideas. Well, that's the funny thing about it too, right? Is that it's a movie about dueling magicians, and then it had a corresponding other magician movie at the same time. We talking movies? I'm seeing Killers of the Flower Moon for a second time this week. Oh, that sounds cool. I still haven't seen it. I still have not seen it. I'm wondering if I should go in the theater or just like wait. I wanted to find someone to go with, but I just haven't really like been able to. Work Christmas party in Saskatoon. That sounds nice. Go to the Holdovers instead of Killers. I don't know if the Holdovers is a movie that I feel that I need to go to get the cinematic experience on that. Nolan's better than some snobs give him credit for. I get that sometimes his movies feel almost campy, staged, etc., but there's so much going on. I guess maybe I like Nolan as a filmmaker, and I've watched like a lot of his movies this year. I kind of went on a whole like Nolan retrospective. And does a lot of things amazingly well. I think possibly someone that started to believe his own hype a little bit, you know? And I think when you have Memento and The Prestige, which are both very tight and kind of interesting and cerebral and cool, he's tried to bring that to all of his other movies to, I think, diminishing returns at some points. I really like Inception, for example. Inception is so fun and interesting and entertaining, but I think, like I was saying this last night, but I think with Inception, with Interstellar, and a few of his other movies, Tenet, I guess you could put on this level as well. You watch it and if you become confused and you're like, I must be confused because Nolan is such a genius and I'm just a dummy and I can't figure it out. But really, when you start thinking about it, it just doesn't make sense. You know? Which is fine. But it's not, it's kind of cheating in a way. It's not that genius to like have something that's so confusing and complicated that it eventually just doesn't make sense. Or the logic really doesn't hold together. I didn't love Tenet, but I loved Robert Pattinson in it, though. I mean, Inception, yeah, it's got problems,
some
but
leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick
visually,
individual,
it's fantastic.
And I found this.
Hello, Benny. Benny Raiders. Hello, Benny. Thank you for the raid. How is Benny's stream today? Speaking of Robert Pattinson, I'm watching Twilight. You know, a year or two ago, we did the whole Twilight film marathon in the Discord server, and I only caught the end of the last one, and then I kind of like regretted not watching the whole thing. I think when Twilight came out, I was like, I was in like my mid-late 20s, and I was just like, this is so stupid. And it is stupid, but it's also very entertaining. And I think it gets to the point of like intentional camp, I think, at some point. And it's just so stupid and insane that it becomes like really pretty great, actually. It was good. I'm very tired. I'm tired too. I'm tired too, Benny. You're still young too, Benny. Just wait. Okay? Just wait. Pretty soon you're going to be old like me. You think you know tired now? It gets worse. That's right.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
I feel like I'm a pretty old 29. Ugh. Gald Greek, thanks for the 200 friend coin. You look good for mid-50s. Okay, well, let's not get crazy here. Just finishing my apple. Enjoying my apple. Old man eats apples starts in them back in my day. Rant. I just need to sit on my porch, rubbing my old knee that swells up in the humidity. It's not a Cortland, it's a Honeycrisp. This affects all of us, man. Apple crunching sounds for sleep and reading. Lo-fi apple crunching sounds to study to. In the rocking chair. Okay. Definitely not my best lunch, but it'll have to do, I guess. Not going to be getting any more of those frozen burritos. I guess I would like to start getting into the serious business for today to make sure I have enough time. It's Thursday, so I kind of got a hard cutoff at around 3:30. I wonder if we can start us off with a video. I think that would be a good way to do it. Didn't Rania have something good? Let's see here. No, I know she was on Empire Files. I think it was Old Dutch in the Discord server had posted something.
So,
when's this from? Oh, it's from 18 hours ago. This looks good. Let's get started with this. It's basically just the Rania Kalik show at this point. Should just make her an official co-host and be done with it. But this is renewed fascism in Gaza. Western elites live out genocidal fantasy against global South. So we can watch this, and then I've got a bunch of stuff to look at about this Al-Shifa hospital and some of the deranged propaganda that we've been seeing. The whole hospital phenomenon is really kind of like insane, isn't it? Like it was really, what was it, 3 weeks ago? That they received such widespread criticism for the bomb that blew up in the courtyard of the hospital where hundreds of people were killed, hundreds of civilians. And there's been this weird thing of like saying, first of all, no, we would never attack a hospital. We would never dream of that. And then there's been this like specific campaign to suggest, and like, let's not be ambiguous here. Yeah, 3 weeks ago, Gaza was bombing its own hospitals. We would never dream of bombing a hospital. And since that time, there's been this specific propaganda campaign to convince people, not just that like Hamas is in these hospitals or they're firing some rockets from these hospitals, but what they've said about Al-Shifa Hospital is that it's like the nerve center. It's the Hamas nerve center. And under the hospital, there's these sprawling network of tunnels. Like it's been 2 weeks of like trying to convince people of this, leading up to yesterday attacking this hospital. And like incredibly embarrassingly, like raising the Israeli flag over this like conquered hospital. It's like the IDF, like congratulations, the mighty IDF. You've conquered a hospital. I hope all the babies and incubators and doctors and nurses really gave you a hard time. You know? And then they're putting out, and they're moving the goalposts, right? They're saying like, look what we found. We found like 7 AK-47s in the basement. We found a laptop, which is like an IDF laptop, which they had to go back and delete the video and then blur it up. And now they're moving the goalposts, saying like, oh, at some point there was maybe hostages here, or at some point there's been some Hamas activity. But no, what they were saying was, and the U.S. was backing them up on this, What they were saying was, this is like the home base. This is like the home base, the nerve center of Hamas activity in Gaza. That's what they were saying. And now they're like moving the goalposts. Look, we found like 7 guns in there. They found dates, terror dates. It was a terror calendar. The whole thing has just been insane and just insulting. And the U.S. has backed them every step of the way. I would like to as well talk about Biden meeting with President Xi. We'll see if we have enough time for that today. Definitely tomorrow we can get to some of that. Let's start with this, though, and then we can focus more on the Al-Shifa Hospital and all the crazy propaganda that we've been seeing. Does that feature Hamas fighters in sexy poses? It's like one of the firefighter thing. They're doing a fundraiser. Yeah, the empty boxes with medical supplies written on it. Not in Hebrew, not in Arabic. Little boxes with big English writing, medical supplies, and then you see them like tossing around these clearly empty boxes. It's like, fuck, man. It's like, it is really amazing, honestly. They're not even trying. It's almost it's insulting, you know? Yeah, this is what I saw you posted this, Old Dutch. That's why I wanted to watch this. You know what I mean? It's like they get so many billions of dollars every year. Like, put some funding into this. Put some resources into this. If you're going to do this like Hasbara propaganda campaign or whatever it is, put some actual effort into it. Like, don't insult us. You're already massacring thousands of people. You have to insult us on top of that? It's truly unbelievable. Anyway, let's watch this and we'll get to all that stuff after. I just wanted to get started off with a little something before we get into all that stuff. And why? We never had to put any effort into it before. Fuck, I don't know, man. I don't know. It feels worse than before. There's all the stuff with the Zoomers discovering the Bin Laden letter as well. There's a lot of stuff to get into today. Let's get this going. We'll see if I have enough time to get to all the wacky shit going on.
So I see, and I have to say this, I see many activists going back to international law. I am sorry, international law is being vaporized under the rubble of Gaza completely. What we are now seeing is that in the face of this renewed phase of fascism, law itself is put at use to defend any fascist fantasy of the West, including the genocide. This is a remarkable moment because the collapse of humanity's trust in international law is directly related to the collapse of the US international order. What imperialism, Rania, is telling us today, to the world today, is that only those who can kill deserve to live. And I repeat, only those who can kill deserve to live. This is why it is absolutely imperative to have a discussion on the role of violence and counter-violence. If this is the message that Western values are propagating, how are people supposed to react? I mean, this is not just hypocrisy. This is beyond
Violence
that.
for me, but not for thee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches. As Israel's
those dastardly Hamas terrorists painted a tunnel in the hospital wall, and our heroic fighters ran right into it. The dastardly, evil terrorists of Hamas dropped a piano on one of our noble IDF soldiers, and unfortunately and tragically, his head poked up out of the piano, and all his teeth had been replaced by piano keys. Very tragic. And you're laughing. You're laughing at this. Wow.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches. As Israel's genocide in Gaza reaches new heights of cruelty, many are wondering why Western regimes, who claim to be the leaders of the free and civilized and lawful world, are enthusiastically supporting the belligerent annihilation of Gaza. Maybe it's their not-so-covert racism. Or perhaps it's opportunism in service to this or that lobbying group. Or maybe it's about what October 7th meant to the Western imperialist project. What Palestinians did in the Al-Aqsa flood operation seems to have struck fear into the hearts of Western leaders. They don't take kindly to indigenous people in the so-called
But how the fuck are people turning billionaire son and longtime empire collaborator bin Laden into an anti-imperialist hero while saying anything positive about real anti-imperialist hero Kim Il-sung? Is still outrageous. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I want to get into that stuff, Relic, because it's interesting how people are discovering this like bin Laden letter and talking about the criticisms of empire that are being made or whatever, in addition to some of the other stuff in there. And we can talk about like the what's in that letter and the criticism of U.S. support of Israel and like building military bases in Saudi Arabia. We are going to draw the line, though, at suggesting that bin Laden was some kind of principled revolutionary. You know, we're not going to do that. You know, I think that's kind of an important distinction to make, and it's you know, it's interesting seeing people kind of discover this. But yeah, if you want to find principled revolutionaries, there's no shortage of those people that are fighting on behalf of like colonized people around the world, whether it's in Korea or Cuba or wherever else. Bin Laden was not one of these people. And like we talked about, 9/11 was also financed and planned with the help of Saudi intelligence. So this is not some like heroic revolutionary operation here. I don't think it's too controversial to say. But who started the Korean War? Oh, that's a good question. I can't help but respond to those people. I don't know if you must be referencing the thing that I was getting into that with on one of those threads, because people have been going around this whole thing of like talking about Korea. There's that whole thread of like the person's like, how do people think that this is one of our bad wars? And the same person was like, I think people just get it confused with Vietnam. They just think it's the same thing. It is the same thing. There was a revolutionary guerrilla war waged by communists against colonial occupiers in Vietnam, the French, in Korea, the Japanese. A successful communist-led insurgency that overthrew these colonizers. And then immediately afterwards, the United States of America stepped in, said, no, we're not allowing this country to go communist, partitioned the country, installed right-wing military dictatorships in the South, and then massacred millions of people in both cases. It's identical. That there is a lot of similarity with Vietnam and Korea. Like I've been talking about before too. If we all recognize Vietnam to be a horrible crime, if Vietnam had ended the same way as Korea had, and they had continued to partition the country, and they had just created North Vietnam and South Vietnam, we would today talk about North Vietnam the exact same way that we talk about North Korea. We only remember it as being a horrible crime because like that wasn't allowed to happen in that case. Yeah, and then I have people lecturing me saying like, when you support or you talk about the DPRK, or you say that Korea was a bad war, you alienate people, and that even nominally left-wing people don't take you seriously. And it's like, well, I don't give a shit. I don't care about making people feel comfortable. I care about being right. I care about having a correct historical and material analysis. I don't care whether it makes people uncomfortable or if they go, oh, we could never say that. You know, that doesn't cross my mind. Anyway, let's get back to this video.
Into the hearts of Western leaders. They don't take kindly to indigenous people in the so-called jungle, as the EU's Josep Borrell calls it, shooting at the garden. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by Matteo Capasso, the Marie Curie Research Fellow at Columbia University
James.
And the University of Venice, Italy, author of Everyday Politics in the Libyan Arab Jamhuriya, and editor of Middle East Critique, His work focuses on the nature and impact of US-led imperialism. But before we jump into it, this is just the first half of this episode. The second half is available for Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/breakthrough news. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Matteo, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Rania. Pleasure
Please
to be with
support Rania and Breakthrough News.
It's a pleasure to have you on. And of course, you know, the topic is an unfortunate one as we're watching this horrific genocide somehow continue to get worse in Gaza. We're recording this about a month after October 7th. So as of this recording, people in Gaza have been dealing with a carpet bombing campaign against civilians for the last 30 days. I'm sure that this number will be outdated once this episode goes up because the numbers are getting higher each and every hour. But as of now, there's around almost 10,000 have been killed or known to be killed. And then about 4,000 children, more than 4,000 children, which is just a disgusting stain on humanity. But, you know, I'm really happy to be having this conversation to you because I think it's about time we kind of contextualize what we're witnessing taking place on a global scale here when it comes to this genocide playing out in Gaza, Matteo. And, you know, the imperialist West, as we know, is backing this onslaught quite enthusiastically. And some people, such as yourself, have put it in the context of the global North living out a kind of genocidal fantasy against the global South through this aggression on Gaza. And I just want to read something that you tweeted. You said, "History is moving. The capitalist West is revealing all its genocidal drive toward the oppressed people of the South, and major powers of the world are watching." So let's start there. Can you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Just one sec.
Yeah, thanks, Rania. It's definitely dark times that we're living. So I would start probably by saying that what is happening in Palestine and even in Ukraine, you know, today cannot be understood outside of history. Both violence, non-violence, bombs and stones are never thrown outside of historical time. Now, history understood as a practical process, as material facts unfolding on the ground, not abstract categories that Western Marxists pick and choose, determine the dynamics we experience in the present. Basically, we cannot pretend that, as the ruling classes and politicians would like us to believe, that we live in a constant state of emergency, immersed in a present that has no relationship with the past and the future. So, while what happened in Palestine on October 7th must be understood in relation to the world, and when we look at the world, we look at a unit, it is also one of the most important part of this unit, because it unleashed a battle of immense magnitude that is leading to a reconfiguration of the unit as a whole. Now, a battle that is not simply a battle between Palestine and Israel, two states or one state. It is a battle that cumulatively is going to decide the future of humanity, that is testing humanity, is testing us every day because its future is at stake. And the future of what this unit, and again, by unit, I mean the world, is going to look like. This premise is so important because it is on the basis of this epic, historic battle taking place in Palestine right now that the entire world is witnessing an unprecedented campaign of genocidal killing, misinformation, and absolutely disregard of the people of the global South. You see, it certainly takes a lot of ideological propaganda to hide one of the most glaring facts of Western civilization, which is the slaughter of the masses of the global South always has been the prime industry of capitalist and Western civilization since the 14th century. Western values, I mean the weight of ideas that define the social relationship instructing our geopolitical world, drip in blood and dirt. We Westerners love to fill our mouth with words like democracy, peace, international law. We do it and it is normal. But what is not normal is how we pretend that these values are simply the outcome of progress, peace, and benevolence. No, these values literally drip in blood. The genocide of the Americas, Congo, colonization of Africa and Asia, 20th century endless wars led by the US in the Arab region and beyond, Libya, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, decades and decades of international sanction and purposeful undermining of communist movements in Europe as well. All these are facts. They are not hyperbolic statements. These are facts that cumulatively allowed the American project to dominate the world. Now, what's important to understand is that stretching from the turn of the last century to the present, there has been a stimulus for Western imperialist wars in the era of finance capital, which has risen in tandem with the crisis of Western imperialism. There is a qualitative change with the American project under financial capital, and this has to do with the way it consumes man and nature in order to meet its profits. Karl Marx used to say that the principal contradiction of capital, by capital meaning the dominant relationship of society, was the capital-labor contradiction. Yet, this has further moved into a north-south divide. This means that every time contradictions emerge within the Western project led by the US, the resolution of these contradictions, meaning also the challenges to the primacy of the Western geopolitical power, will depend more and more on the degree to which imperialist countries oppress and exploit developing countries of the global south. And so, in a historical moment, as we are talking now, where the US is declining due to the long march of China out of centuries of humiliation, and two special military operations of Russia, respectively in Syria and Ukraine, the West has been thrown into a geopolitical nightmare. What has the response been to this? A renewed wave of fascism and genocide onslaught of the masses of the global south, whose scale is directly proportional to the threat being posed to the Western project of control. Now, in this case, the role of historical agents having to strike a blow to one of the major cogs in the web of a declining American hegemony, meaning Zionism, have happened to be the Palestinians. But as I said, it is not only the liberation of Palestine that is at stake here, it is the future of the geopolitical order, of humanity as a whole. In the face of this huge blow, it is rather normal that the Western ruling classes have gone back to a core characteristic of their civilizational march: genocide with religious characteristics.
Wow, I mean that's definitely a different way to look at it, and I want to touch on a point that you made, but maybe go a little bit deeper. And I know that Western leaders are quite racist. They're demonstrating that now with how they just don't care at all how many Palestinian babies are bombed. But still, I'm stunned every single day, Matteo, by the level of cruelty in their rhetoric. They seem just as invested as Israel is in crushing Gaza. Even this rhetoric about the civilized Israelis fighting off these like barbarians of darkness, Hamas.
That's white supremacy.
It's something Western leaders are invested in globally. You can take that language and like a cookie cutter, place it use it in this. It's been used, I should say, in every single situation where it's like the colonizers versus the indigenous people. It's always this, the civilized, light of nations against like these dark barbarians. And it's, or you could say it's the garden versus the jungle, as the EU's Joseph Borrell puts it, right? Garden and jungle. And I would say like Hamas's October 7th operation
the wagon circle
you could see it as the jungle, the so-called jungle, fighting back against the garden. And that's terrifying, I think, to the West, to the garden. And you can also see it in the way they're trying to repress their own populations domestically from showing solidarity with the supposed jungle in this case. And you've referred to their reactions as a...
Sorry. I want to be respectful to Rania about not getting her caught in a weird pause face. I think one of the reasons as well, though, why our ruling class is so adamant about supporting Israel nonstop is because, like, this is what they've always feared about our own society, right? It's like they're they're worried about one day people of color in America starting to get the same kind of ideas, you know? And there was times in the 60s where like that seemed like it was maybe a possibility. Like there was a genuine kind of sentiment about engaging in kind of armed struggle. And there were black nationalists that were explicitly making this kind of argument about why that was necessary and righteous. You know, that's a lot of what the Black Panthers were talking about. And that's exactly why they had to shut that down so ruthlessly. And like I've talked about before, do the kind of like sleight of hand of passing civil rights legislation at the same time promoting mass incarceration and the drug war and basically just like the new Jim Crow. Yeah, and you can say the same thing about indigenous people as well. Like that's what they say, the same thing whenever we talk about giving land back. They're like, well, we're just going to be genocided. They're going to do to us what we did to them. You know, it's the exact same thing. But that's exactly why I think it's so important for our ruling class to support Israel no matter what, because they're worried about the same thing happening to them here. I think I think also the 2020 protests really spooked a lot of people in the ruling class, because that seemed a little bit like that moment was maybe coming back. I have more to say about that as well. You know, since those 2020 protests, it seems like they've been waiting for when the next time is going to come. When there's going to be another uprising. And is this going to be the one that really is the big one that they've been fearing for all these years? And I think there's maybe something to be said about why the police haven't been, although we're starting to see that change now, like we saw this protest in front of the DNC that was attacked by police, police rioting, just like they were doing during the BLM protest. But I think there's a reason why that hasn't happened as much so far yet, because they know that that could very well escalate this current mass movement for Palestine into a massive uprising here. So I think it feels like there's been a concerted effort to make sure the police are not escalating that to these massive riots every night, because they know what might come next if that starts to happen. Also, having workers realize they were essential. That's totally sure. Yeah, totally true. Yeah. A lot of class consciousness awakened real fast. Like, we got to shut this down. We got to really shut this down. And the amazing thing about these people is that they're so like, they like institute this kind of threadbare social democracy during that time to help people out. And then they're just like, which would have placated millions of people if they had just made those policies permanent. The child tax credit and the expanded unemployment and whatever little benefits people were getting, they would have placated a lot of people if they had just made those permanent. But they can't do it, though. They just can't do it. They can't make those permanent. And now people are right back on the verge of uprising again. And like that's the kind of the thing about this moment domestically, is like, if this is going to escalate into this similar kind of mass uprising? Let's go back to this. Didn't make it permanent, then blamed inflation. And then inflation went away immediately after they canceled all those programs. Just went away.
Huge wave of, and you mentioned it again now, but you've called it a huge wave of renewed fascism related to the capitalist West. And I'm going to note another tweet of yours. You said, if you are wondering what's happening in Gaza,
our ruling class will never turn on.
Step back and think that every single day that the genocidal instinct of the collective West carries on, we move closer and faster to the collapse of the U.S.-led international order. This is not wishful thinking. So when you talk about, that, what I just said,
the U.S.-led international order,
and also
or
this
empire,
kind of like renewed
that many countries are a part of.
Fascism. Can you elaborate a bit on what you mean by that to kind of explain why this is happening?
So honestly, Rania, when I think of myself,
weapon subsidies do not cause inflation. No, what causes inflation is when money is transferred from the wealthiest people to the poorest people. That causes inflation. When money is transferred from the poorest people to the wealthiest people, that's just business as usual. That's fine. That doesn't cause inflation. That's okay.
You can count
when that
on me.
happens.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Diego, for another gifted sub.
As as an academic somehow, as someone who grew up here in the West, I mean, I cannot reconcile with this unprecedented onslaught of people happening in Gaza. This fascism exists but must be located in history. Otherwise, again, it seems that events and trends emerge out of nowhere. What we're living, the history we are living, the facts as a practical process tell us that there has been a progressive economic rise of China and 2 Russian military interventions, respectively against the US-led regime change against the Syrian government in 2015 and against NATO encroachment in Ukraine in 2020.
We got to talk about the President Xi and Biden meeting too in the presser as well.
Decisively thrown the US and its allies, as I said, into a geopolitical nightmare. Now, the American project has entered an historical phase of political decline. The unipolar moment is crumbling, and new political blocs from the South are emerging, including the BRICS. They are becoming more assertive. They want to shape an international order that prevents their humiliation, but treats them equally. Together with this process, when we think of the 7th of October, we also have to remember that recently we have witnessed a wave of military coup in West Africa against French Western neocolonialism, the increasing assertiveness of Iran in West Asia, and its collaboration with Russia, while Cuba and Venezuela have withstood decades of sanctions and US-sponsored coups. The pressure on the West and its allies is increasing. And so why this is important? Because the most immediate reaction to the conscious realization of their decline has been a renewed wave of blatant fascist rhetoric and ideology and material actions. Now, there are certainly overlaps between fascism in the 1930s and what we have now, but fascism today is also the direct result of the failure of the liberal project. The Indian economist Utsan Prabhat Patnaik point out that this new fascism, what I call fascism with European characteristics, which is a direct pan, for those who keep labeling China in all kinds of ways, is based upon 3 major conditions that enabled its rise. First, there is a crisis, okay? This is a crisis, and it has to do with the decline of US imperialism, which is now faced by the rise of the countries of the South, demanding to be treated equally in the world. Second, the Western ruling class incapacity to overcome or unwillingness to overcome this crisis, since it would mean accepting them as equal actors. And third, the complete state of disarray of the left in Europe. The latter is what I personally consider the most critical aspect. So starting with 2016, with the election of Donald Trump in the US, the most striking feature of this newly fascist West has been the complete rehabilitation of Nazism, for example, in Ukraine, as a form of popular resistance against dictatorial Russia. Now, from Giorgia Meloni in Italy, where I am, to Macron in France, I'm not even touching on Germany because, it's desperate case. The European ruling classes, they are ready to sacrifice everything, their people, their countries, for the mighty power of the US. So again, this is not a question of, look, that political party has won the election. This is a historical tide of Western fascism in which we are drowning right now.
Well, sounds incredibly frightening when you put it that way.
Ronnie's I think another this guy is spitting.
Part of this that should be emphasized is, people are of course horrified by Israel's brutality, specifically in the case of Gaza. Right. And something interesting about this time around, because there's been many onslaughts on Gaza, though this is the most aggressive I think we've ever witnessed. We do see the term genocide being used in the mainstream. But actually, the genocidal intent, you and I both know, has always been there. Why do you think it's so much more, though, obvious today when it comes to the way Zionism is acting out against Palestinians? And I think that does build upon what you're saying in many ways.
Hello, ML Thoughtism.
Yes, because this renewed wave of fascism in the West has also struck its most faithful allies in the region. And when we look at the case of Israel, I would say there are probably two major issues to highlight. First, Israel, as you were saying, vis-a-vis the Palestinians, has always been a racist project. The state of what is known as Israel is based on ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians and the forceful displacement of more than a half of the Arab population of Palestine in 1948. Now, there are videos which keep circulating online, and I'm sure you've seen them too, where retired Israeli generals admit to all kinds of unspeakable crimes committed by Zionist gangs. Factually committed, I have to say, not fabricated, as we have seen now in the recent weeks when discussing the Palestinians, such as raping of women, mass graves, to the point that there is an academic article where two Israeli academics document how the Zionist army
Biden is still saying all the same
cistern
lies.
water of the Palestinians in order to kill them. Basically, what we are seeing is that there is nothing more reassuring than having the chance to admit these crimes, yet being completely sure that nothing will happen to you. We did this, we are sorry, maybe, but this is history now for them. But let's keep going. In the aftermath of the first Intifada in the 1990s, an Israeli colonel accused of ordering soldiers to break the limbs of Palestinians testified that these beatings were part of the accepted norm in that period. Testifying in his own defense, this colonel called Yehuda Meir told 3 military judges that his superiors did never question this order. There was nothing special in it, nothing out of the ordinary. Actually, he accused Jack Rabin, the so-called engineer of peace with the Palestinians, to be the one who ordered the military to break bones and legs of Palestinians. When these charges were raised, what did the Israeli parliament do? Decides not to investigate Rabin. What I'm basically saying is that to show that, yes, Zionism has always been racist. And we can go on and on about this, Rania. We never lack the evidence and facts. It is always the political clout that did not allow the space to talk about them. Yet, there is a second important point which relates to what you were talking about, why this is more obvious now, why it is so blunt, much more in your face, fascist and reactionary nature of the Israeli government today. In the past years, what we have witnessed is the increasing authoritarian consolidation to power of Benjamin Netanyahu.
And Pizzi, you're talking about how well established are the Nazi factions in Ukraine. I know there's a minor one, or at least I've known it as fairly minor. I think sometimes we get a bit confused about like the specific militias that are going on, or the group like Azov Battalion, or the groups like Right Sector or whatever. But I think there's something that goes a bit beyond that, which is that this whole Ukrainian nationalist movement is based on rehabbing these anti-Soviet Ukrainian nationalists like Stepan Bandera, like the Banderites. It's not just like a few military factions. The Banderites are like the people that run the country. And there might be different degrees of like people that are open and honest about that, but like there's a whole lot of people in the sort of like civil infrastructure that are these Ukrainian nationalists that uphold and rehabilitate these nationalist figures who in many cases participated in pogroms and the Holocaust, and former SS divisions, Galician SS divisions. So yeah, the Banderites are they were the people that, are a big part of the idea that they're a democratic state. Exactly. It's not just about a few little factions in the military. It's an kind of animating ideology of Ukrainian nationalism is about rehabilitating the anti-Soviet nationalists who helped carry out the Holocaust. So it's more pervasive than just being a few little groups in the military.
And the emergence of fascist leaders within the Likud party ranks, Naftali Bennett, Lieberman, and so on. Israel in 2018 had the opportunity to legalize officially the exclusive Jewish nature of its state, which basically ratified further the Israeli citizenship law of 1952. Now, there is also the crisis of the so-called Israeli liberals, and we will talk about this further even when it comes to the West, which is reflected by the increasing power of the Haredim, the Orthodox community in Israel, whose views...
Yeah, Old Dutch. I love how the Banderite history is super nuanced and complicated, but Hamas is just a terrorist organization. That's right. This, when it comes to the SS, when it comes to like the Banderites, it's like, well, you have to understand at the time, you know, they had to make these impossible choices, and they were being brutalized and colonized by these like evil Soviets. So they had to make these impossible choices to become Nazis. You know, it's not even they were really Nazis. It's only that they were kind of working with the Nazis a little bit. That's when we need to have nuance, when we talked about that. But when you want to talk about people that grow up in a concentration camp, joining an extremist group and carrying out acts of violence, it's just like, no nuance, black and white, terrorist group. If you say one thing that's remotely tries to add any nuance to that, you're supporting terrorism, you're supporting violence against civilians, all that kind of stuff. It's very selective when we employ this nuance, isn't it? Like, that's one of the things we've talked about a lot on here. When we want to be nuanced, there's certain things that are nuanced, like people joining the SS in Ukraine and elsewhere in the former Warsaw Pact states. That's when we need to have nuance. We can't be nuanced about like Stalinism, though, for example. We can't be nuanced about Palestinian resistance. There's a lot of things we can't. No, you can say one good thing about it and it's like gone. You're out. Not allowed. Fired from your job. But then sometimes you gotta go, you gotta think when all of a sudden the context becomes very important. It's interesting how selectively we employ this kind of nuance. No, I know we've looked at all that. Ropes into Eden. Like, it's truly amazing the amount of mainstream coverage there is on how pervasive Nazism was within that nationalist movement and the Euromaidan and everything, and how as soon as it got to February 2022, it's just like into the memory hole, forgotten. It's truly amazing stuff.
Have now been magnetized by circus workers, because that's what they are, like Itamar Ben-Gvir. They represent 15% of the Israeli population with very high birth rates. At the same time, the Haredim population, since the early 2010, represented 30% of those living in the settlements of the West Bank. So, as the Israeli government was failing to provide housing to these communities, he lumped them in occupied land. Now, all these factors is what ushered the crisis around this very debated Supreme Court reform in Israel, which the Haredim supported, and the reform was basically saying we want to allow the Israeli parliament to overturn the decisions of the Supreme Court. This has created major protest in Israel. But we should always remember that none of this reform, none of them have any impact over the lives of the Palestinians. Neither this protest ever questioned the existence of the occupation in the West Bank or the 16 years blockade imposed on Gaza.
And then, I mean, there is the fact that, we know the U.S. supports Israel for a lot of reasons, but I think the primary reason is U.S. imperialism. But can you unpack that? What does that mean? Why is Israel so central to the U.S. imperial project?
So I think that this is really, I want to thank you for this question, because I think at this historical moment, each and every human being who is looking at Gaza must be able to answer this question in order to develop a clear understanding and a principled political position, not over, Palestine, but over the future of humanity. The American project, what we call imperialism, is a system of worldwide control. It's based on material exploitation of the South by countries of the North, which also includes the collaboration of the ruling segments of the South of the world. This material relation of exploitation and domination is maintained through the use of military domination, sanctions, and whatnot, in order to basically prevent developing countries from harnessing their internal resources for regional or popular development. Together with the material component, there is an ideological war unleashed on these countries, which can include the use of gender ideology, developmental discourse, and all these kinds of human rights discourse. In other words, the project of US-led Western domination is material, economic, military, political, and ideological. Now, for this project to consolidate, each continent and region of the world has undergone certain changes. In Europe, what we have seen, which we discussed me and you in previous episodes as well, was the use of the strategy of tension and the funding of Nazi forces to counter anything that resembled or was supporting communism. In the Arab region now, in the Arab region, the situation developed differently.
Well, Saint Lotus, like I noticed that as well, but I think what he's talking about is something that is important to keep in mind, which is that the U.S. imperialism uses LGBTQIA plus issues in an effort to pinkwash colonialism and imperialism. Like you see it in Israel, like the whole idea that creating this idea that like Israel is some like paradise for gay and lesbian and transgender and other queer people, which is not even accurate. But the way that this is used as a way to kind of like destabilize and justify imperialist aggression on the part of the U.S., I think that is an important thing to keep in mind. And like, that doesn't mean we need to think that it's not important to fight for those rights in our own communities, in our own society. It is important. But we also need to, at the same time, recognize when it's being used maliciously, when it's being weaponized, when any human rights, the way that the West, America, Canada, the UK, France, or wherever uses human rights and weaponizes human rights, and gay and lesbian and queer and transgender issues are part of that process. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Saint Lotus. I agree.
Yet as part of this unit, the Arab region, in fact, occupied a unique role in the geostrategy of US imperialism since World War II, especially due to its oil wealth. Being a key natural resources for the economies of the imperialist countries, the best means to ensure their guaranteed access consisted in controlling politically the region. To achieve these goals now, the American project operated in close cooperation with two faithful social political formation allies, Israel and the Gulf monarchies. And this is where we get to the relationship between imperialism and Zionism, between the US and Israel. Per the Zionist entity, as per the Zionist entity, this became effectively a US military outpost in the region. Now, between 1943 and 2023, a recent US congressional paper, which is available online, shows that the US has provided Israel with 160 billion of US dollars in aid, with inflation adjusted reaching about 260 billion, without considering the regular loan guarantees extended that are worth billions and the military packages. Obama, for instance, the so-called most progressive president of the US, who deliberately bombed Syria and Libya, provided Israel with 38 billion in military assistance, the largest aid package in US history. Ideologically, it is fundamental to highlight that both Israel and the US share a political mythology of exceptionalism. This political mythology basically incarnates the colonial and missionary zeal that justified the genocide of the Americas back in the days, and displayed the religious belief towards the idea that, the US has a unique role to play. The same goes for Israel vis-a-vis the Palestinians and the region. After all, how many times did Netanyahu show up with a new map of the Middle East at the UN? So, as much as ideological reasons are important, we always need to figure out the material premises of this relationship. Why does the US invest so much in Israel? Why does the US provide Israeli with so much money to have free healthcare while this money is not used to provide jobs and healthcare to Americans? And the same goes for all Western governments. This aid, all this money to Israel is an investment in militarism, in war. Now, there is a peculiarity of the Zionist entity which lies in being a settler colonial formation like the US that incubates a mode of consciousness that promotes Western values while securing US domination of the region. When Israel acquired nuclear weapons, through its numerous military attacks on other countries of the region, we're talking about Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Israel has been the major force behind imperialist capital control and accumulation and its corollary, meaning Arab regional development. So, as the Palestinian leftist circles in the 70s and 60s consistently told us, Zionism is the spirit of imperialism. So, as much as the liberation of Palestine is a struggle against US-led imperialism, on whose behalf Israel acts as a policeman, an attack on Israel is an attempt to undermine directly the core interests of the US and its allies in the region. And it is so important to understand this passage.
And Joe Biden is very clear about this, right? We would have to invent an Israel to protect our interests.
The Jewish people. This is far from reality. The Palestinians.
Joe Biden is really amazing. He's almost rivals Trump in his ability to like say true things almost by accident. The whole thing about Israel, you know, if it didn't exist, we would have to create an Israel to protect our interests. And he did something similar the other day with Xi Jinping. When they had this meeting, which seemed kind of productive, like it actually like it's kind of interesting and something that we need to spend more time focusing on. These efforts right now to repair the diplomatic relationship with China. You got to wonder like what's going on behind the scenes there. And then like immediately afterwards, Biden says like, yeah, he really spells it out what it is to be a dictator, according to the United States. And what it is to be a dictator, Biden spelled it out in no uncertain terms. A dictator is the leader of a country that has a different political system from us. That's what it is. And like that's what it has always been. You know, when you're in a Western liberal democracy, you're a president, you're a prime minister. If you're the leader of a nation that has a different form of government, dictator. That's literally all it is. And he was like, he is open about this. He admitted it. Which is amazing because I can't imagine China's too happy about this, considering the progress that was maybe just made in healing some of the diplomatic relationship. There's actually very funny clips of Blinken when Biden's saying this. You can see Blinken in the front row of the speech being like, oh. I think this meeting is genuinely historic. We'll look back on it. Well, the thing is,
you can count on me. You're going to have a good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Free Palestine.
Cutman, thanks for 27 months. We've talked a lot about the possibility for direct confrontation with China and we've covered that like endlessly on this show. So it's interesting that like there's being efforts made to maybe like tone down. Maybe they realize that like they do not have the capacity to take China on. They can't even like protect Ukraine from Russia. They have a possible regional conflict brewing now in the Middle East because of their partners in Israel just acting like total psychos. So maybe they're like, we got to really start to tone this down here because if this escalates, we're going to be completely screwed. Maybe that's part of it. But as we know, if there's a different like maybe they're making efforts to like heal the diplomatic relationship. If there's a different administration, though, as we've seen, it doesn't matter what deals they might make or what the tone is now. If they get another administration in there that wants to take a more hostile line, none of the whatever steps are being taken right now diplomatically are going to mean anything. Being democratically elected means coming to power via judicial coup or by lobbyists and partisan operatives installing you as leader. That's right. Yeah. That's what it is to be a democratic leader.
History's mandate are facing a structure,
we'll try to get to that after,
in which Zionism represents a fundamental cog.
I mean, yeah, I'm so glad you explained it like that. And then you can understand even better when there's that clip of Joe Biden from like the 1980s where he explicitly says, were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel, because it does serve that very purpose that you just explained.
If we look at the Middle East,
there it is.
I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel.
When did they ever
There's
apologize?
no apology to be made. None.
When did they ever
It is the
apologize?
best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
Thank you,
The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
But then,
thank you, sir.
Let's move to the Palestinians and then other groups in the region that that are referred to as the resistance, right? Groups like Hamas, the rest of the Palestinian factions as well, Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and on and on and on. There's military wings for each of these political organizations that are currently involved in the fighting in Gaza. Hamas's Qassam brigades happen to be the largest of those factions. Then you also have Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is a very powerful force. And of course, their partner Iran, which is an actual country. You have the Houthis in Yemen. You have the various factions in Iraq. They've all been smeared by the U.S. as terrorists. In fact, these groups are labeled by the U.S. as terrorist groups. Iran's IRGC has had the terrorist label slapped on it as well. But in the region, they're known as the resistance axis, and they're seen by many people. I won't say everyone, obviously, because the region is very polarized internally as well. But by many people, they're seen as forces of anti-imperialism. And some, in progressive circles in the West might find that a bit confusing because a lot of these groups have a very religious flavor. So, Matteo, can you explain to our audience?
This is where he's about to go off. It's amazing how only Hamas is mentioned and none of the other factions of Palestinian resistance is mentioned. Yeah, and the fact that it's not what's engaged, the resistance, the axis of resistance, it's not just Hamas, it's a bunch of other factions who might disagree with on a lot of things, but are in overall partnership at this time. But that's part of the nuance that we're not allowed to talk about.
How these groups serve as anti-imperialist forces in the Middle East, both ideologically and materially. And that's not to endorse anything. It's just to state
count on me. You're
what I think is an observable fact.
To talk you through all this.
Kijiji Genie, thanks for the 2 gifted subs. I appreciate it. Thank you. Kijiji Genie.
Yeah. In fact, I'm glad you said that at the end, because we always need to start from facts, which is something that the Western Marxists don't do. So from history, once we look at history as a practical process built on facts, on material facts, rather than abstractions of a book club called Western Marxism, on which I will comment later, then we can understand what is happening here.
Wait, what was that? Good. I love rewinding.
Facts, rather than abstractions of a book club called Western Marxism, on which I will comment later. Then we can understand what is happening.
Get our asses.
The struggle of the Palestinian resistance is a struggle for national liberation. And at this historical moment, Hamas is leading up the struggle. Though, as much as the Western media loves to single out Hamas, as you rightly said, we have different political factions. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, coordinating their political and military actions with Hamas. This historical process is not coming out of nowhere. Now, I'm going to keep banging on this, but 2011 witnessed the success of the NATO-led regime operation in Libya, but Russia's intervention in Syria showed that regional and geopolitical balances were about to change. Second, the capacity of the Islamic Republic of Iran to withstand decades of sanctions, like Cuba or Venezuela have done, has allowed it to grow into an important political player, becoming what we could say, for sure, the number one enemy of Israel. Providing support, Iran, to other socio-political formations in the region, including, as you said, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Ansar Allah in Yemen, and the Islamic resistance in Iraq, the political and military assertiveness of Iran represents a decisive shift in the nature of the ideological march of the region against the American project. What is important to understand is how the Muqawamah, the resistance axis, consolidated, becoming what we can definitely call an anti-imperialist force in the region. Why? First, on an ideological level, Iran and Hezbollah have largely avoided producing a sectarian, exclusionary, Shia-led vision of the region, despite what the mainstream analysts in Washington, D.C., they want to tell us. In other words, they circumvented the danger of responding with the same medicine to what US imperialism had progressively funded since the times of the Afghani Mujahideen, working hand in hand with Sunni reactionary forces, the Wahhabi vision of Sunni Islam, basically, which we saw what it did in Syria and Libya and in other places. On the contrary, the Muqawamah, the resistance, has organically preserved the historical and ideological continuity of the region, moving from Arab to Muslim unity. It did not reject the past, It has instead combined past and present, creating a new ideological order that calls on Arab Islamic identity of the region to fight against the material and ideological war unleashed by foreign oppressors, US imperialism. Now, the religious call from a Marxist perspective is a powerful one to mobilize the masses, and it is completely in tune with the ways in which the American project, as we were talking about, has turned religion into the major syntax to express political grievances in the region. Politically, the Axis has also emerged as the only political force coherently articulating a fight against US imperialism. The other forces, secular and non, were in fact either attacked by imperialist wars of aggression or turned into useful collaborator of imperialism. Let's look at Fatah and the PLO. So for the so-called Western leftists, and now, this is important to say, all this process is utterly irreconcilable because to understand, because Western Marxism has been so infiltrated by the US and its ideological weight, let's think about Gladio again, that literally has turned into a book club, a bourgeois project detached from the material struggle of the masses of the South. They enjoy theorizing about Marxism with their imperialist privileges. As a result, what did we see from Western
we love to
Marxists?
lecture who's
They
doing
both
Marxism
come out
properly.
comparing the fascist government of Netanyahu to the Islamic fundamentalism
We love to lecture
of the
everyone who's
Palestinian resistance.
they're not doing anti-imperialism or Marxism properly. That's what we're able to do. Ronnie just can't handle it.
They even went as far as to say that they are two sides of the same coin, or Netanyahu created a Hamas. Again, these are wild abstractions that have nothing to do with the practical process of history. Western leftists go around with what? With a checklist, Rania, hoping to find what? The secular, gender-sensitive, non-violent resistant movement, very often NGO-funded. Yet the so-called Western Marxists are the same one that weaponize the language of human rights to allow a US-led regime change against the Iranian government, or were very happy to turn the most reactionary US-funded Sunni groups, Islamist groups, into some sort of moderate rebels when undermining the sovereignty of Syria and Libya in 2011. Now, on this point, I think it is important also to look back and realize that why everyone jumped on the so-called Arab Spring in 2011. Because the Arab Spring was a protest movement that largely diluted the imperialist question in the region, diluted the Palestinian question and the fight against the American project in the region. The Arab Spring looked like more an inspired Obama version of the region, as he also famously proclaimed at the time. Hezbollah at the time was perceived as a political actor suppressing protest in Syria, siding with the regime, a sort of political force in a sectarian region. October 7th, however, flipped this equation, and it reignited the centrality of the struggle for Palestine against imperialism and Zionism in the region. Now, whereas the Egyptian government is letting people in and out of the Rafah crossing in Gaza according to Israeli whims, the Egyptian streets are chanting for Hassan Nasrallah to intervene in the war. This is a major shift in the region that threatens the stability of the ruling classes of the Arab regimes.
It's interesting you put it that way, because I was thinking in recent days how there are people who I know personally, I haven't polled people, but I do know people personally who, after 2019 in Lebanon, there was like an uprising in Lebanon that I wrote quite a bit about. It was very quickly and sadly hijacked by various like NGOs and embassies and just groups that were trying to mold it into like an anti-resistance movement, and some people did become anti-resistance. And I think it's because either there hadn't been a war with Israel in what seemed like so long, right? That it seemed like that wasn't the big threat anymore. And now it was about, changing Lebanon internally, domestically, not understanding that imperialism remains the primary contradiction. And, you can't fix Lebanon until it's a sovereign country, and it can't be a sovereign country until it doesn't have the American, Israeli, Saudi boots on its neck, right? But I've seen some of those people now go back to, okay, we get it, pro-resistance. And I think that's interesting because it's like all of that 2019 funding, not all of it, but a significant portion of it seems to have been undone by this war in Gaza. And so it kind of speaks to what you're talking about, where this genocide in Gaza is like reorienting the region after all of these imperialist efforts at distraction and, fomenting sectarianism. And I'm not saying this is undone all of that. Obviously, those cracks still exist. But it is, seeing those images out of Egypt's Tahrir Square with people calling on Nasrallah to bomb Tel Aviv. If you had told me that was going to happen in Egypt this year, there's no way I would have believed you.
Yeah.
Before October 7th. That said, I wanted to speak about another angle here. And that is, yes, it's devastating to watch Israel carpet bomb babies. I don't know how else to put it. They're carpet bombing babies. They've turned Gaza into a death camp. And they're saying it. They're saying they're committing a genocide. The Israeli officials, at this point, we have plenty of evidence. If Israeli officials are ever prosecuted in a court of law, it would not be difficult to prosecute them for carrying out a genocide in Gaza, because they've said so many times that is what they're aiming to do. But you know what? Dropping bombs on babies, Matteo, is actually not difficult, especially when you're Israel and you can get away with whatever you want. It's the easiest thing to do when you have superior military power, to drop Hellfire missiles and bunker buster bombs on residential buildings and hospitals and refugee camps on people who can't fight back. But, militarily, if we look at this just from pure military terms, the Israelis haven't really made any military advances. Yes. Hamas is still firing rockets. And we see videos they're releasing showing them quite bravely, I would say, taking on the Israelis who are, operating under the cover of tanks. Like you see Hamas guys.
No one posts any red triangles
not wearing
in the
any
chat.
armor.
You're gonna get me in trouble.
Walking up to tanks.
Do not do it.
And putting explosives on them and then walking away. And that's how they're fighting the Israelis right now on the ground, blowing up their tanks. Meanwhile, in the north of historic Palestine, what the world internationally refers to as Israel, Israel's playing by Hezbollah's rules. Yes. It seems the Israelis are showing that they're, as Nasrallah called them back in 2000, weaker than a spider web. Even with the most technologically advanced weapons from the U.S. at their disposal, it seems like they have an infinite amount sometimes, that we know there is a limit, because, they could actually end up using all of them and not have very much left at some point if this continues. It seems all the Israelis excel at is killing civilians. I'm curious your thoughts on the military side of things and the significance of the fact that the Israelis have set this goal for themselves of eradicating Hamas, which we all know is just not possible.
They are cowards, yes.
First, I think, Rania, probably 2 points, or three. I would say that the first thing is we have to remind ourselves that Israel is fighting the war, but the US and Europe are administering the war. And this is something that's Hassan Nasrallah reaffirmed in his speech very well. There is an umbilical cord between imperialism and Zionism. So when we refer to Israel, as you rightly said, we refer to US-made planes, bombs, generals, and troops participating, actually, being there. We've seen all these reservists that they've come. So the Palestinians in Gaza are facing a world structure, not an army. At the same time, what the US and Israel are discovering, though, is that it doesn't matter how much you can kill if you don't know how to fight. The imperialists have set up very unreachable objectives, eliminating Hamas completely. Yet, what they really don't understand is that you can kill as much as you want, but you cannot eliminate the idea of national liberation for the occupied people. The only way to reduce the power of Hamas is to reduce the condition under which the Palestinians' resistance emerges, thus the occupation, the creation of a Palestinian state, and so on. The Americans and the Israelis, when I was thinking about, they operate exactly the same way the technocrats operate when they say we are facing an economic crisis. They tell us what? That all we need is a technical solution, cut budgets, print more money, raise interest rates, eliminate Hamas. But they always avoid the root causes of the problem: profit, greed, capitalism, Israeli occupation. The difference here is that the entire Western world has turned genocide into a technicality. So they are just genociding an entire population. As you said, 4,000, half of them is kids. They launched a silent ground invasion with a complete censorship on what is happening inside Gaza. But what did they achieve? Nothing. They have shown the complete unreliability of the West. They vaporized the pretense, whatever pretense Western values still have. And the more they continue to do so, the more resistance will emerge in the region and beyond. And as a second point, Rania, because I think this is very important, we need to remember one thing. There is no way to defeat a people's war. There is no way. We have seen this over and over throughout history. We have seen all the videos of these fighters, as you were saying, in track pants, assaulting a Merkava tanks, costing $4.5 million with bare hands. The resistance as a capacity, as a strategic and tactical capacity that goes way beyond the Americans. And that's what Hezbollah is also showing in the north, because it basically has entered the world, is imposing its tempo, it's not rushing, and they have responded hitting clear and important targets.
Well, and then I want to also move to, with that in mind, the fact that we finally heard from the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, a few days ago. It was, I think, maybe like 26 or 27 days after October 7th, he gave his first speech, and it was much anticipated by everybody, people in Lebanon, people in the region. The Israelis, the Americans listened very closely. And, Nasrallah, he laid out the narrative as the resistance sees it. He reestablished the rules of engagement with Israel on Lebanon's border, and explained what Hezbollah was accomplishing with the sort of, border war that's been taking place since October 8th. And he, of course, demanded, one of the central point he made was that we need an immediate ceasefire. But he also laid out, some red lines for Israel in the West. And he, proclaimed that we have a willingness to go to war with you if you really want to take it there. We don't want to, but we will fight. We will fight you, especially if you dare come after Lebanon. So I'm curious, Matteo, I'm sure I know you listened to the speech as well and watched the speech as all of us did. What are your thoughts on that speech, which I think, was a very sober, calculated, and strategic when compared to the kind of emotional insanity of the leaders in the global north, and especially of Israeli leaders who are just like on a bloodlust vengeance warpath?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the speech of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was carefully threaded, laid out. And I was stuck. There are many points, even the same fact, which I'm sure you listened to, Rania, that Western diplomats they sent questions to the Lebanese, to the Hezbollah, to Hezbollah, the representative, to ask for clarifications about some of the passages, shows the fear that Hezbollah has, the power, not the fear, the power that Hezbollah has right now over the imperialist and also over Israel. But said that, anyway, I think there are probably a couple of points that really struck me, and I think they are worth raising. The first one is probably the centrality of of patience and steadfastness, which is Nasrallah and the resistance is dictating the tempo of the war and is not willing to engage in a war according to Israel and the US genocidal killing. It cannot and will not do it. And I think this is very important. Why? Because they are showing that they operate against imperialist time. They are informed by what we could call a temporality that is completely at odds with the one in which the Zionists and imperialists operate. So to be clear, the resistance forces have made out of patience the key team and weapon. One has to think about the time taken to prepare this operation on October 7 and the capacity to surprise the most technologically advanced army of the world. They work through steadfastness, they learn from battles, they have built a long political horizon of victory, which again has been cumulative, starting from the war in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah in 2006. So they have a deep sense of time which aligns with the history, with the rise of multipolar order. The Western forces, on the other hand, they are so trapped into this reactionary mode of violence, of genocide, they just want to reestablish the status quo as soon as possible. And I think this is one of the most important aspects for me. But there is another two aspects which are interrelated. And again, I'm sorry to repeat this, it's really a blow to whatever Western Marxism is being left here, because the speech of Sayed it was anti-imperialist in its nature. Why? Because Nasrallah discussed Palestine as an independent battle, yet central to the region and the world order. In fact, he not only highlighted how the resistance axis did not know anything about the operation, but they at the same time, they are working and entering the war according to the tempo of the battle in Gaza, which is the most important battlefield. So Palestine is central, yet independent at the same time. Also, he stressed that Palestine is a question of national security, not just for Lebanon, for Egypt, for Jordan. Basically, Palestine is not a Palestinian question only, which is precisely what every collaborator of imperialism would love Palestine to be reduced to, into an NGO single issue problem. What Nasrallah said, and he spoke as one of the leaders of the resistance axis, showed this great temperament also when talking about the possibility of Israel and the US infringing the national security of Lebanon. And the last point is that, and I think this is where really show the analytical capacities, not of Nasrallah, but of history, of the resistance itself, that it connected all this to what? He didn't bother to talk to the Israeli government. He spoke directly to those administering the war, the US government. And no matter, I think, what checklist proposed by Western leftists to identify the progressive movements, we really are able to see the anti-imperialist consciousness of Hezbollah and of the Muqawami. It's right in front of our eyes. These are facts, they're not abstractions.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear the rest,
great stuff. Please support Breakthrough News on Patreon. Want to listen to the rest of that episode, link that there again. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Why is this? Let's try and talk a little bit about this Al Shifa hospital situation. It's calling up everything here. Let's go back to, let's talk a little bit about this hospital. And I wanted to just talk about the ways that these assertions that Israel has made that this hospital, Al Shifa hospital, is some kind of Hamas home base, and the way that Biden himself and the U.S. intelligence and security apparatus have backed them on this. We've declassified this intel. We've declassified the intel about this hospital. This was a couple days ago, 2 days ago. So a lot of groundwork was, and I talked about as well. It's like you go from 3 weeks ago, the mass outcry and criticism over bombing that hospital. And then since that time, there's been this nonstop push to promote the idea that Hamas is operating out of these hospitals, is using it as a home base. It's the vast tunnel network, all that stuff. And now you have U.S. security and intelligence apparatus kind of backing them on this before this operation.
We do have...
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Anon, thank you.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Anon, for the gifted sub. They immediately, the 5 gifted subs.
You can count on me. You're going to have good
Anon,
old
thank
Rob
you, very kind
to
of you.
talk you through all this.
They immediately started targeting literally the last operating hospital left in Gaza called Al-Ali.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It's amazing, Super, the way that they've gone from 3 weeks ago. We would never,
you can count
we would never
on me.
dream.
You're gonna have good old Rob to talk.
We would
you
never
through all
dream
this.
of attacking these hospitals, to be like open, to be manufacturing the idea that these hospitals are all hubs of terrorist activity that they must attack. I also saw there was a big traffic jam for miles by the Bay Bridge blockade. There was an action like that in Montreal as well on the Jacques Cartier Bridge today. But again, so you have U.S. intelligence backing these claims.
We do have information that Hamas and the Palestinian
Islamic
Jihad uses some hospitals in the Gaza Strip, including the Al-Shifa Hospital, as a way to conceal and support their military operations and hold hostages. They have tunnels underneath these hospitals.
So we have information. First of all, they say, well, where's this information coming from? That's one thing they don't really clarify. We have information. We have intel. Famously, the Pentagon has never lied or misrepresented any of that intel before. And they have a perfect track record on that. But yeah, where's this intel coming from? Is it coming from the IDF or Mossad or whatever? Where's this intel coming from?
And so Hamas and PIJ members operate a command and control node from Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. They have weapons stored there and are prepared to respond to an Israeli military operation against the facility. So I'm just telling you what we as the intelligence community assesses is happening in Gaza City, how Hamas is using these hospitals to operate. We do.
John Kirby as well. The White House's John Kirby says the U.S., this is 2 days ago, the U.S. has its own independent intelligence that shows Hamas and PIJ are using Al-Shifa Hospital and other hospitals for holding hostages and other military activities. Kirby, and so let's keep this in mind, okay? This is really important because they're trying to move the goalposts now about this. They're trying to move the goalposts. He says, Kirby added that Hamas has a command and control center in Al-Shifa Hospital, okay? So that's not we found a couple of dusty old AKs. It's not, we found like a single laptop. You're talking about a command and control center. This is like a hub of this activity. It's their secret base. That's what they were saying. So when they try to walk that back, when they try to move the goalposts, they say, at some point, maybe possibly hostages were here. What they were saying 2 days ago is that this is a command and control center in Al-Shifa Hospital. He also said the U.S. doesn't want the hospital to be bombed and doesn't want to see a firefight at the hospital. Okay. So it's the enemy bad guy terrorist command and control center. But of course, we don't want to see it bombed or we don't want to see any firefights there. That would just be a real disaster. We're only going to co-sign whatever intelligence is being used to lead to that exact outcome. This was 2 days, like a whole bunch of reporting on this. Everyone reported this. White House says it has intelligence that Hamas was using Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital to run military operations. Is there a video of Kirby talking about this?
Somehow,
this is on Air Force One.
Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad use some hospitals in the Gaza Strip, including Al-Shifa, and tunnels underneath them to conceal and to support their military operations and to hold hostages.
So those are the claims. So then, of course, now that they have full justification for this. Sorry, let me just choose my clips here. Now that they've got full justification, they move in. They have this absolutely embarrassing scene. Like, they should be so embarrassed by this. Like, they're bragging. They're bragging the mighty IDF. They're bragging about conquering this hospital. They go and put up the fucking Israeli flag on top of this hospital. Like they've won some big battle. They've won some big battle against babies and incubators and doctors and nurses. And they go put up the fucking flag at the top. How, like, just embarrassing. An absolute joke. And there's this as well. So, okay, so again, let's look at the exact words here. As a command center. Okay, it's being used as a command center. Those are the words they were using. And then you have this image of the mighty IDF in some kind of conference room. Again, congratulations. You defeated a bunch of doctors and nurses and premature babies. Congratulations. And what do you have? You got a few backpacks, 6 grenades, some like terrorism books. That's what they got. That's what they got at this command center, which they spent weeks building up, like manufacturing consent and building up this consensus that there's some big, vast Hamas secret base command center. No, I know, Super. Sometimes you just have to laugh at it. IDF are the undisputed kings of taking hospitals from the infirm and infants. Nobody can do it like them. Exactly. They use their Krav Maga skills to do this. And then there's, of course, so they put up this video afterwards to talk about this command center, which they then reposted with a few different additions, and they the amazing thing is they deleted it. No cuts, no edits, just the undeniable truth. Watch as LTC Jonathan Conricus exposes the countless Hamas weapons IDF troops have uncovered in the Shifa Hospital's MRI building, and the post has been deleted. And so and one of the reasons they did delete it was because one of these laptops that they found had an image of an IDF soldier in the background, which they forgot to blur out. This is their from their command center video. This is the evil terrorist home base command center.
The MRI center of the Shifa hospital. Israeli troops breached here a few hours ago, and we have cleared the area, make sure that it's safe. And a few of the most interesting things that we have found totally confirm, without any doubt, that Hamas systematically uses hospitals in their military operations in violation of international law.
Keeping guns and laptops in the MRI center.
I think
That's right.
is only the tip of the iceberg. Let me show you a few examples. Security cameras have been obstructed. All of the security cameras are covered, and this isn't the only one. You'll see the rest of them here. I don't know when it was used the last time, but it is definitely an MRI machine. And if you follow me behind the MRI machine, I'll show you what our troops exposed just minutes ago. In military terms, this is a grab bag, grab and go of a Hamas combatant. And if you zoom in and we get some light over here, what you'll be able to see is military equipment. There is an AK-47, there are cartridges, ammo, there are grenades in here, of course uniform, and all of this was hidden very conveniently, secretly behind the MRI machine. On the other side, we found a backpack with what appears to be very important intelligence, including a laptop, and we'll show you that momentarily. We tried to uncover the cameras, but all of the cameras have been obstructed. You can see there's black tape.
If they control the hospital, why are they obstructing the security cameras?
Closet here, which is in
I
the
thought it's their
main part
command
of
center.
the clinic. This is what they found. The contents of the bag are full military kit for one Hamas terrorist. A live grenade.
This is the command
ammunition,
center.
fighting
This is
vests
the
with
sprawling
insignia,
command center.
boots, and of course uniforms, and last but not least, standard AK-47. Inside the hospital, hidden in
Let's
a
hide the
secluded
guns
area.
behind this
Let's
huge
have a look at
magnet.
what
Yeah,
we
that's a
found.
good idea.
Inside the very same cabinet, there's insignia, military insignia, a knife. For those of you who read Arabic, you'll be able to understand what it says here. But it's Hamas, the military wing, Kataib al-Qassam, of course a vest with equipment, and as always an AK-47, standard gear, grab and go. The last item, which I'm sure will be very interesting to analyze, is a laptop. We found it
This
in
Hamas
the MRI
WD-40.
room. This is how the laptop looks.
Yeah, that's the
I don't know
laptop. They
who
had to
it
blur it
belonged
out.
to, but now it is being analyzed by our intel people. Tactical radio communications, which we will analyze. Lots of disks, which will be analyzed. And a computer, which at first glance already provides a lot of incriminating evidence.
Oh, it does provide incriminating evidence, sir. So when they initially deleted the video, they hadn't blurred out the screen. Israel finds backpacks containing weapons randomly planted in the hospital. No tunnel complex. This is what, again, let's not let anyone move any goalposts here, right? Because now they're saying, oh, it was maybe a place where maybe there was some Hamas guys, or maybe they might have possibly stored terrorists or stored the hostages here. They were saying command center. They were saying sprawling underground tunnel network. Like this is clearly what they were articulating. And it's like, oh, we found a few backpacks with some military stuff inside, and which we just have to take their word that were there in the hospital. If it was there, it wouldn't be that surprising, but we don't know. We can't possibly just take them at their word that this is, oh, we just happened to find all this stuff here. Anyway, on this laptop that they found, they re-uploaded the video because they forgot to blur the laptop. The laptop was already plugged in with this picture open on the screen. On their Hamas laptop. Supposedly, they found the picture which was shared on Israeli media of the released Israeli soldier, which people doubt that she was even a prisoner. inside the laptop that apparently was already logged in or without password. And we got to see the medical supplies as well. But this is their big discovery of the nerve center, the Hamas command center. It seems like they would want to highlight the entrance to the vast network of tunnels in this video. Like, why not? We were told over and over and over again that that's where it is. It is a little strange that they didn't take the time to do that. Hamas masterminded everything except disk encryption. Yeah, or just like they put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the password. This is the operations base. Remember the whole cartoon, the Netanyahu cartoon? Here's the intelligence. This is Al-Shifa Hospital. Here's the intelligence-based illustration video regarding Hamas's use of the Shifa Hospital, both above and below ground. This was Netanyahu, October 27th. They turn hospitals into headquarters for their terror. So let's keep that in mind while looking at the footage of what they found. You know, a couple of guns, a couple of grenades, and like a shitty laptop. Here's what Netanyahu was posting a little over 2 weeks ago. Can't believe they haven't deleted this, actually. Yeah, this is the evidence that they used. Where's this? Why can't we see footage of this? Where's this vast, sprawling G.I. Joe base? Or Cobra, I guess I should say, using the analogy correctly. Where's this vast underground complex, which is literally just like video game footage? Like, this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. This is our proof. You know, they've been spending Hamas office space. Can't even... Love to hear some of the water cooler talk on there. And it's amazing, right? Because we're not OSINT people over here, yet we were able to use our brains and watch this on October 27th and be like, this is absolute bullshit. Obviously, this is just absolute bullshit. Jesus Christ. And then there's this thing. Like, it's just, all of this is just so shameless. So 18 hours ago, the IDF saying, IDF soldiers successfully transferred medical supplies while conducting searches for terrorist infrastructure within the Shifa hospital in Gaza. While Hamas exploits Gazan civilians for its own survival, the IDF provides humanitarian aid in order to minimize civilian harm. Like they've killed tens of thousands of people. So they show them with these, whatever piece of equipment, and here's the boxes. The boxes with English labels saying medical supplies. Big English label printer paper you slapped on there. And then look at these obviously empty boxes. The big comically huge medical supplies. Medical supplies. It's so stupid. Just those generic medical supplies. That's right. Just kind of medicine, It's the Big Lebowski thing. What's in the briefcase? Papers. Just papers. My business papers. Just papers. There's plus 25 health in every box. That's right. I'm unemployed. The whites. Oh my. They're filled with 10,000 medical cotton balls each. They were all out of those. Like, it is so unbelievable. Everything about this. And I want to talk a little bit about TikTok and Gen Z and everything, and why people are freaking out about TikTok right now. This I found very interesting. This, where is it? Is it here? Crap. Let me see if I can find it again. Sorry. There's this intercepted call from the director of the ADL and APAC. And look at how much they're freaking out. Like, they're very, very aware that people are not accepting their narrative of events anymore. And people are, especially young people, are using these platforms to get extremely radicalized against Israel right now. Like, they're very, very aware of this. So listen to this call. It's really interesting. And then we can look at some of examples of the people in Gen Z and like what they're doing right now. The Zoomers.
I want to point out that we have a major generational problem. All the postified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs to put the same brains that gave us Taglit, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy toward this, like, fast. Because, again, like, we've been chasing this left-right divide. It's the wrong game.
It's not Stephen Miller, it's Jonathan Greenblatt, the director of the ADL.
The real game is the next generation and their accomplices, the useful idiots in the West, are falling in line in ways
That's
that are
us.
terrifying. Last thing I'll just say, we saw a dramatic change in the language of the activists
Yeah, listen to this. They're freaking out.
The language of groups that we've long tracked, who've long been problematic, like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace. They flipped like this. The language I could show you from their toolkits, because our analysts are in their groups.
Well, that's another interesting thing from this call. They've got people with Jewish Voices for Peace and people that are part of these groups. Pretty clearly admission there.
We saw this again on October the 8th. It was that fast. Like, the language in their toolkits was all about the Zionist entity and lots of other language.
They're really losing it. They're really not happy about this. So let's take a look at some of this. And you can see why they're freaking out.
Used. Okay, hi IDF TikTok account. Love your propaganda work. Really great stuff. Really great propaganda. I really like how everything is, like, you know, very clearly laid out. I really like that you organized it for us. My question is, how did the motorcycle get in the basement? Did it, like, bump down the stairs? Did it take the elevator? Because I just want to know, like, I don't know, if I was in a hospital, I would maybe look twice if somebody was just riding a motorcycle through the hospital. Because usually, like, the ground floor isn't the basement. Like, usually the ground floor where the road is, the basement's under that, so it would have to go down. So how were they driving the motorcycle in the hospital? And then I feel like there's video evidence of that. Like, there's gotta be, because if they were gonna get down to the basement, right, they have to get down there somehow. Because it didn't look like the motorcycle would fit through the tunnel. How would the motorcycle get up the tunnel to get that dude's house? Like, I'm confused on the logistics. Is there a security camera we could look at, maybe, to see, like, how do they get into the basement?
They obstructed all the
because
security
even if
cameras,
they
that's
were
right.
taking an elevator, which I feel like is the only really safe way to transport hostages down to a basement on a motorcycle, right? You would still have to come in the hospital to get in, like, on the ground floor to get into the elevator.
From the tunnel network,
if you're riding, but like, who would ride a motorcycle in the hospital? Like, why would you bring the motorcycle in the hospital? You would park it, and then you would go in the back door. So, like, I'm confused as to how this is effective propaganda, because all this is making me think of is, how did they get the motorcycle into the hospital? Why would they put the motorcycle in the hospital?
Here's more, like, this is what Gen Z is saying about this stuff. To say nothing of them all discovering Bin Laden's letter.
Tried to make this video a million times without literally screaming into my camera and seeming like a maniac, but I can't help it. That's just who I am. You guys know me for being loud. And there's one thing I'll never fucking be, is loud and wrong. And I'll always stand up for what's right. And yes, I've only learned about this in the past month, October 7th. And you know what? I'm glad that fucking Israelis cry that much, because it reached my ears too. They want to sit there and fucking cry and do a smear campaign on Palestinians and want to act like they want to chalk up 75 years into one fucking day. Jesus Christ. And they want to call it a 9/11. Oh God, they want to call it a 9/11, and everybody knows what happened after 9/11. The only people who found this situation confusing were the people who believed that the Americans were really threatened by terrorists during 9/11, even though they fucking caused it. And killed 1 million people after the fact, and then added TSA to make everybody fucking scared. My God, all they're trying to do is scare you, fearmonger, warmonger, and separate you from your own humanity. That's it. After learning about what happened in Palestine, it's very clear to see it is not confusing at all. It's very clear to see who is the higher power.
It's not surprising what they're like. We got to cancel TikTok. We got to get this out here. We got to do something about this. Like, this is why they're freaking out. Because this is the kind of thing that people are using TikTok to, the kind of message that they're using that to share.
It's only been around for 75 years, has the 4th largest military. How come? How come they're getting aid from America, $3 billion a year, and the minute they had a thing happen, America runs over there and helps them? But you got people over here saying they're scared to go outside. Meanwhile, I go outside, I see Israeli flags, no fucking problem. People put up the Palestinian flag, they lose their jobs, they get doxxed, they lose their managements, they lose their agencies, they lose friends, they lose so many things. And they've already lost their entire fucking families. How much more do Palestinians have to lose for Israelis to be satisfied? I would love to know. They lose their homes, they lose everything, they lose their names, their children, their mothers, their fathers. To say that this is only October 7th is a sin. To say that this is a war is a sin. It is shameful to call this a war when there is no military on the other side.
And James, you say the Bin Laden letter thing is a classic feeling from all of a sudden something I've known for 20 years is suddenly revealed to lots of people. Yeah, I mean, well, part of it is that people are just young, so people they were children or not even born at that time. That's part of it. But yeah, I remember David Cross doing stand-up talking about Bin Laden and being like, making fun of Bush and saying they hate our freedoms, right? And saying, no, I think they did 9/11 because they didn't want American military bases in Saudi Arabia and they didn't want us supporting Israel, because that's what he fucking said, you know? I remember him saying that. I remember that stand-up bit.
And it's even more disgusting when I hear people try to shit on fucking Muslims, saying, why doesn't their Muslim brothers take them in? Nobody wants to take them in. That's the type of people they are, blah, 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 blah. Why do they have to leave? Why have you never asked that?
Yeah, it's true.
Would you just get the fuck up and go? No, the hell you wouldn't. So why do Palestinians have to leave their own home? I want to know that question. And if you want to sit there and condemn Hamas and make it seem like terrorist. I hate this fucking word terrorist. I can't stand this word because it's only used on Muslims. I haven't heard that word terrorist used from any other freaking nation, color, or religion. Only Muslims get the word terrorist. Why? Why do you not question these things when you read them? And all the propaganda coming from Israel. Them calling it a 9/11 was the biggest red flag. The minute I seen that, I said, oh, word, I already know what the fuck is going on over there. But I wanted to make sure I was educated before I made a video. Because when I start talking, I start fucking screaming. I start going fucking crazy. Real life, because I don't stand for this shit. I'm pro-Palestine until it's backwards. My heart is in Palestine. You see these people dying. You see these people losing their bloodlines. You see the long list of names. You see the babies dead. You see children holding dead children. You see children losing limbs. You see fathers holding fathers are dying, mothers are dying, grandparents are outliving the freaking rest of their own generation. There's a second Nakba happening right now. And you're telling me that you're sitting here and telling me that you can stand with a country that's doing that to someone else. And they're not just doing it to the Palestinians. They're sending aid to Azerbaijan to do it to Armenians too. So this shit is making no sense. How a country could have this much fucking power, this much influence on other countries to help them, and it doesn't make you question in 1 second, even though they've already been around for 75 years. It doesn't make you question anything? Really? You're not seeing the same coin on both sides? Or president right now supporting a genocide? And you're gonna sit there and say, Republicans are the only ones who like war? Let's be real. Let's be fucking real. There's an agenda going on, and it's unfortunate that it has to do with taking the lives of others. It is so shameful to see. And the hate that I've been seeing, and to say it's only happening overseas and Islamophobia is on the rise over here, and sure, anti-Semitism is also on the rise. But the thing is, those Zionists, they're protected by our...
This is just one example, but this is exactly why these Zionists in the ADL and these kind of organizations are just losing their fucking minds right now. Because it's this is, just the ability, they've had the full ability to control the narrative for so long that now that's becoming completely out of reach for them now. They no longer have the ability to do this. That's why there's all this talk now about TikTok. And here's on the other side. Just compare and contrast which is more compelling. Compare and contrast which is more of a compelling message.
I'm not okay. I'm not okay. All I could do is cry. I'm not eating. I'm not drinking. I'm sick. I'm sick. I can't go on with my life after seeing pictures of babies burned, hugging each other, dead, beheaded, grandmothers burned alive on Facebook. It's too much. It's too much. Now I understand why my grandmother was so bittersweet her whole life. She survived the gas chambers. She survived experiments done to her by the Nazis. And I'll never, ever, 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 ever forget her pain. Ever. My grandmother fought for us to be here. Her whole family was wiped out, and you want to fucking wave your shitty ass flag and then burn ours and then cry wolf when we kill your civilians because Hamas holds them hostage and doesn't let them leave, and Israel tells them to go and Hamas makes them stay, and then you blame us to make us look like the monsters. Psychological warfare, you sick fucks. Burn.
So yeah, just compare and contrast which is more compelling, which is a more compelling message. Who's winning and who's losing the info war here? Who's winning and who's losing the propaganda war? And then and justifying the murder of civilians as well while you're doing it. And blaming it on Hamas. Nazis experimented on my grandpa, and that's why my grandma, and that's why we need to continue killing their civilians. Move your car later to Wendy's drive-thru. Was it the blinker or was it like the emergency lights? I don't know. We have to look at some of this Bin Laden stuff. Or I mean, look, let's keep looking at like young activists. So then we've got people protesting outside the DNC being violently assaulted by police. And again, let's look at what these younger activists are saying here. And ask yourself if there's been a shift. Has there been a shift in the rhetoric for people that are standing with Palestine? Is there any effort being made whatsoever right now to do both sides this, or to like make people feel comfortable, or to try to be reasonable or civil? Like, listen to what younger activists are saying right now.
We were just brutally attacked by Capitol Police. Somehow, some way, January 6th, they did not do their fucking jobs, but today they can do it. Today they can do it when it's black and brown people, when it's marginalized groups. Somehow, some way, they find the motherfucking strength to fucking shove people down on and fucking tear gas us. Peaceful fucking protesters. We are peaceful fucking protesters. At the end of the day, you see what the fuck they're doing. You see what the fuck they're doing. We are out here because there are 11,000 and counting Palestinian people that have been slaughtered by the Zionist regime. That is Israel. We are out here because we are fucking tired of our fucking tax dollars going to kill children in another fucking country. That is why we are out here. And these fucking bitch-ass pigs are part of the goddamn problem. Because these are the same motherfuckers that go over there and trade with the fucking IDF. And look at them. Look at the way they fucking act. This is the militarized fucking police force. This is the shit that we deal with in America. Now just fucking imagine what those children and those men and those women and those fucking grandparents in Gaza are experiencing right now.
But seriously, like, what's more convincing to fellow young people? Is it someone just like crying in their car and embarrassing themselves? Or is it someone that has this kind of righteous passion that's talking about, you know, the reality of the violence that's been going on, and is not pretending that violence just started on October 7th, which is a preposterous and ridiculous thing to believe. You know, they're like, just look at TikTok and the search terms and like who's winning this info war. It's not even close. It's not even close.
We're outside the DNC. We're outside the Democratic Party headquarters because this party claims to be on the side of life and peace and equality. And we're saying that we want them to live up to their values and oppose this horrific war and call for a ceasefire now. And we're being responded to by the police shoving anti-war activists down the stairs, shoving peaceful protesters back with their bikes. And because our party that 80% of us want a ceasefire, would rather beat up protesters.
Hold on, to be continued. One second.
And it's a good point too. Where were these guys on January 6th? Weird how when it's a bunch of fucking small business owner Trump fans, these guys can't seem to find it within themselves to defeat them and to prevent them from getting into the Capitol building. But all of a sudden, when it's a coalition of young people that are trying to demand a ceasefire, somehow they find it within themselves to protect the DNC building. You know? So, but yeah, what's more compelling, right? Someone just crying in their fucking car and saying all this nonsense, or, you know, or this, or we're looking at now. And look at these cowards, these absolute cowards. Look what they're saying about these protesters who were like lighting candles outside the DNC to represent all the civilians that are dying. And then you have Democrats going on TV, on CNN, and being like, they were violent. They were attacking police. And I'm telling you, like, the police have been very careful so far not to start rioting and going crazy and escalating these protests that we've been seeing into something more severe. But like, I feel like we're getting to a point where that's not going to be happening anymore. And I think this is almost the first example that we've seen of cops rioting, similar to how they did during the George Floyd protests. Look at how disgusting this is. You look at the people outside the DNC and what they're saying. Here's what the fucking Democratic congressmen that were inside the building are saying.
Yesterday, there were over 200,000 pro-Israel demonstrators with a permit.
There was not 200,000. There was maybe 30,000.
Demonstration less than 1,000th as large. That's also getting publicity. And it's getting publicity because
the idea, first of all, the idea that the Palestinian movement has nowhere near the same size as the pro-Israel movement is just patently false. Like, just any person with two eyes can see that, right? And it's comparing this specific direct action that's going on outside the DNC versus the many pro-Palestine protests that have been happening all over the world with millions of people. And then suggesting that there was 300,000 at the pro-Israel rally, which is just verifiably false. Oh, but they didn't have a permit. They didn't have a permit, though. Like, and these are the Democrats. These are the young people that Democrats expect to go and vote for them in the next election. These are the very young people that Democrats are going to go and say, this is the most important election of your lifetime. You wouldn't want the bad Republicans to get in. Oh, no, you wouldn't want that. And you've got these young people demanding a ceasefire at the DNC, outside the DNC, getting the shit beat out of them by the police, and then Democratic congressmen being like, they didn't have a permit.
Their willingness to attack police
and attacking police
is a force multiplier. A few demonstrators willing to attack police getting a fair amount of publicity, whereas the amount of publicity for 200,000 peaceful demonstrators proportionately less.
And I just want to make a note here that we don't know exactly who was responsible for the pepper spray, but as we continue to report on this story,
fucking cop was responsible for the pepper spray.
Sherman, I do thank you for joining us tonight.
I believe the Capitol Police.
Jesus, these people are just absolute scum. Absolute scumbags. And this is what these motherfuckers are saying. Same guy, Congressman Brad Sherman. This was his tweet, still up. Was just evacuated from the DNC after they're calling the youth activists, predominantly Jewish people, after pro-terrorist anti-Israel protesters grew violent, pepper spraying police officers and attempting to break into the building. Thankful to the police officers who stopped them and for helping me and my colleagues get out safely. And then he says, he has the fucking audacity to say, apparently these pro-Hamas demonstrators want Republicans to prevail in the next congressional election. Yeah, for sure. What's going to be different? What is going to be different if Republicans win in the next congressional election? What is going to be different? Like, you're out there you're telling them that they're pro-Hamas, pro-terror. You're supporting the police, beating the shit out of them. And you're saying, can you imagine Republicans might win in the next election? Then things might get really bad for these people. Like, are you fucking kidding me? These people are really something else. Then Yonah Lieberman says, let's be clear, the U.S. Capitol Police were violently responding to a peaceful protest. These are these violent protesters.
Oh, shit. So look, I just got thrown. People getting thrown down the stairs. People getting thrown down the stairs. Yo.
And yeah, really, it was only a matter of time before cops started going after these protests like this. And if this movement doesn't stop, and I don't think it will, it's going to continue increasing in size and intensity, and the direct actions are going to keep increasing as long as this war is going on. And it doesn't seem to show any sign of stopping anytime soon. Yeah, this is right. This is the bastion of freedom and democracy, Atra. This is the shining beacon around the world of freedom and democracy. They're always the ones to start the violence. I mean, that was always the thing with the whole George Floyd protests, that all these people demagogue around saying they turned into these violent riots. There were these violent riots all across the country for months. And it was time and time again. Like, we have countless evidence, countless examples of these peaceful protests like this getting turned into violent riots by police. They're police riots. They're the ones escalating these things into violent situations night after night after night. Here's some of the stuff about this Bin Laden letter going crazy on TikTok.
Letter to America, which is Osama bin Laden's letter to America explaining why he attacked Americans. And it's why I'm ashamed to say that I not only have never read this letter, but I didn't even know this letter existed. It's wild, and everyone should read it. If you haven't read it yet, read it. However, be forewarned that this has left me very disillusioned, and I feel the same exact way I felt when I was deconstructing Christianity. I feel a little bit just confused, like I have entered into another timeline. What is this? And yeah, so go read it.
The contradictions are heightening.
So I just read A Letter to America, and I will never look at life the same. I will never look at this country the same. I will never. Please read it, and if you have read it, let me know if you are also going through an existential crisis in this very moment, because in the last 20 minutes, my entire viewpoint on the entire life I have believed and I have lived has changed. Please read that entire letter.
I need everyone to stop what they're doing right now and go read. It's literally 2 pages. Go read A Letter to America. And please.
And The Guardian deleted it too, which is funny.
Because I feel like I'm going through like an existential crisis right now. And a lot of people are. So I just need someone else to be feeling this too.
I need you to stop what you're doing and go read A Letter to America. It is literally the craziest thing I've read in a while. And while I can't say that I'm that surprised, I am pretty shocked. So go read it and tell me what you think, because I really also need to talk to other people about this. And actually, before you even read the letter, I did want to mention, in reading the letter, I could only think of this tweet that I saw the other day. Under settler colonialism, any kind of resistance is branded as terrorist because the only acceptable violence is violence by the occupier.
So this is fucking insane. I just read Osama bin Laden's letter to America, which I will be going through right here, but it's actually so mind-fucking to me that terrorism has been sold as this idea to the American people, and honestly just so many Western inhabitants within certain nations, that this group of people, this random group of people, just suddenly wakes up one day and just fucking hates you, just wants you dead, wants you gone, and this is all because they believe that they're better than us. Like, that is the root of terrorism. It doesn't make sense. They just hate your fucking nation. But reading this letter, it becomes apparent to me that the actions of 9/11 and those acts committed against the USA and its people were all just the buildup of our government failing other nations.
you. My voice just wants to leave you.
You know, they're freaking out about this. And we can have criticisms about like certain aspects of this, but like you can see why people are losing their fucking minds.
I really urge everybody to
they
Google
did drag us
and
on for
read
this,
it,
yes.
because I thought that I had quite a lot of media literacy, but this takes it to a whole nother fucking level where I was just like, holy shit, like propaganda is genuinely so deeply embedded into our fucking DNA.
Read a letter to America, you're probably waking up. You probably have a
Not only terrorism, but also specifically the trope of human shields that's been used ad nauseum for decades to justify indiscriminate extermination. Yeah, and like, listen, there's things in this letter that I think are horrible. There's kind of like Jewish question stuff in that, from what I've seen of it. What are we watching? These are people on TikTok reacting to, it's gone viral to read Osama bin Laden's letter to America, which was published in The Guardian. But I think one interesting thing about the letter that I was looking at also, which is just bin Laden is making the exact same case, which is not something I agree with, to be totally clear. But he's making the exact same case about American civilians that the IDF makes about civilians in Gaza. He's saying like, well, they're not innocent. They vote for the government. They support the government. They support the government sending money to Israel. They support the government bombing Afghanistan and sanctioning Iraq and building military bases in Saudi Arabia. So they're not innocent, you know? And, you know, that's not something that I happen to agree with, but that's also word for word the exact justification for why Israel feels it's justified to drop thousands of bombs on this captive population in Gaza and kill tens of thousands of innocent people. Because they said, well, they're not innocent. They support Hamas. They're all Hamas. And you can make that case significantly more when it comes to either Israel or the United States government. Because as we know, the Israeli government and especially the United States government are responsible for orders of magnitude more violence and death and destruction than Hamas or any other extremist group could ever be responsible for. Significantly more. So that's why I think this is kind of like an interesting phenomenon that's happening here. I think it's a little problematic, to say the least, to treat bin Laden as if he's some honest actor or some principled revolutionary, which he was not. He's a billionaire from a billionaire family working with Saudi intelligence. And like there's a lot of talk from people like bin Laden as well, talking about the noble Palestinians who don't actually do anything to help Palestinians, you know. So that's actually a common thing with a lot of these like Arab client states of the U.S. government. They say a lot, they talk a lot about Palestine, but they don't actually do anything, nor did bin Laden. So I don't think we need to treat bin Laden as some kind of like principled revolutionary. He was not. He's an extreme reactionary. And I don't think innocent people deserve to die for the crimes of the U.S. government or the Israeli government or Hamas. But it is really interesting that people are kind of waking up to this kind of this kind of dialectic between what we're told about terrorism, you know, the whole they hate our freedoms things, versus like the actual justification that's given for this. DPRK did materially more for Palestinians than Wahhabis. Absolutely. Yeah, of course. And that's why I hope these people start moving on from reading the bin Laden letter and realizing that they live in the great Satan and the evil empire, and they read State and Revolution next. I think that's what people need to be reading next time. Just look at the power dynamics and you know who's oppressing who. Well, I mean, super, like it's one thing, like there was that person that was coming into the chat yesterday to talk about how I'm going to be deplatformed and stuff, and having little lists of all my tweets that I liked on October 7th, and have a list of all the things that I've said where I support these terrorist groups like Hamas, and saying, oh, we're going to get you kicked off Twitch, we're going to get you kicked off Twitter or whatever. And listen, I don't support these groups. I do support Palestinians, bulldozing the Gaza prison fence and attacking IDF checkpoints, which they're morally and legally justified in doing. I don't support violence against civilians. But I would say, though, that like I do think it's interesting, when we're like allowed to support acts of violence and when we're not. Either when it comes to like a group like Hamas, or even when it comes to like Russia or Putin. And this idea that like you don't get threatened, you don't lose your livelihood, you don't lose your career, you don't get in trouble for saying, I support the US military, I support the IDF. But if you say, I support Hamas, Then it's all of a sudden, kick this guy off the platform, get him fired from his job, ruin this guy's life, whatever it is. And again, I'm not saying that, but to me, that should still be a legitimate viewpoint. Like, why? If there's these big conflicts going on, we're legally not allowed to say, like, no, I support one side of the conflict and not the U.S. government, not the Israeli government. And people say, well, you can't support Hamas because you should be kicked off of social media. You should lose your platform. You should lose your income if you ever say anything good about Hamas or that you support Hamas, because they're a terrorist group, though. You see, they're a terrorist group. Never mind that they're designated a terrorist group by the U.S., Canada, all of the Western colonialist powers, and it's not like around the world. There isn't this uniform agreement about what that is. But the whole question of like terrorism as well. Well, you can support the IDF. You can support the U.S. military. You can't sit there and support Hamas because they're a terrorist group. They target civilians. The IDF targets civilians. The U.S. government targets civilians. The U.S. government and the IDF kill more civilians than a group like Hamas could ever hope to in their wildest fever dreams. And they intentionally target civilians. The IDF right now intentionally targeting civilians, tens of thousands, significantly more than Hamas has ever been responsible for killing on October 7th and every other day combined beyond that. You know? So why is that an opinion that will have you lose your job, lose your livelihood, lose your platform, lose your friends or whatever? Well, they're a terrorist group, you see. The IDF is a terrorist group. The IDF is a significantly more well-funded, well-organized, and successful terrorist group. Who decides the definition of terrorist organization? It seems to be politically motivated. It's not only politically motivated, but it's racially motivated as well. You can look at Ukrainian people are not terror, even if they deliberately target civilian infrastructure or civilians themselves. They're not terrorists because you have a little chart when you look at people's skin color, and then when they're a certain color, it's terrorism, and when they're not, it isn't. Yeah, of course, Azov Battalion are not terrorists, of course. Yeah, Hamas is literally the government in Gaza. So I find that a really interesting question. I'm glad people are waking up to this idea, you know? And like I'm saying, I don't support civilians being killed. I don't. But should that be a opinion that's completely like non-legitimate in our society or in our culture? Whereas supporting a group like the IDF or the US government is totally okay to do. Anti-Soviet warrior puts his army on the road to peace. Exactly. When has that ever come back to haunt us before? Anyway, we'll just finish this video here.
A lot of questions. Welcome to the club. But we don't have a lot of time to sit and talk about everything because there's still so many puzzle pieces that we just do not know about.
Go read A Letter to America. Like, seriously, go read it. Type A Letter to America in Google or whatever you use, then come right back. Because this makes a lot more sense. It explains so much. And I guarantee you it's going to blow your mind. And let's talk about it. So go read it, come back. Whew, it's a lot. It's a lot.
My voice just wants to leave
Gen Z has decided that Bin Laden was cooking a little bit. That's what they've come to the realization over the last couple of weeks. You can see why our ruling class is freaking the fuck out right now. And I agree, Perilous, but that's the conclusion that some people are reaching.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Hey. Are you even paying attention to me right now?
I read Osama bin Laden's letter to America.
The way this letter is going viral right now is giving me the greatest sense of relief.
If you're Muslim and you've lived in the US since 9/11, you know more truth than the typical citizen. Now it's all coming to light because of Palestine.
Hey, are you even paying attention to me right now?
This morning.
So, you know, it's clear why people are freaking out about this. You know, I get it. Dude, any basic ML text is going to be basic, just, but definitely infinitely better. Seriously, this is what I'm hoping people can. If you're gonna, you know, take a look at, if you're gonna start relitigating Bin Laden and becoming an apologist for him, who's again not something I happen to agree with, even though there's things that I think are important in that letter to talk about the reasons for why this attack happened, which has nothing to do with hating freedom. But maybe we can talk about this guy. Maybe we can even talk about another guy, another famous world leader who has been maligned, who has had dirt shoveled onto his grave. I can't remember the term that was used. Maybe if even here, you know, if you're going to read a letter to America, and you know that's going to teach you some things, and you're going to say, what else was I taught about? What else was I lied to about? You know, what else was I lied to about? I don't know. It's like maybe there's more historical instances and people that I was also lied to about. Maybe I was not totally given the totally accurate truth about certain things. You know? I wonder if there's other people that we could start to re-examine through this kind of critical lens. I wonder if only there was someone out there that we could also apply that same kind of reasoning to. I don't know. Lodane, it's a critique. It's a history and critique. It's very nuanced. I got a few more things on the hospital though before I have to go. I got to go in about 20 minutes. Shit. When do I have to go? I have to go pretty soon. This has gone by fast, this one. But just to go back to this hospital, and maybe tomorrow we can... So this is Biden still. This is from yesterday. I guess I should have connected this to what I was talking about earlier with the hospital, but, you know, this is the best I could do. So Biden's still repeating the same talking points yesterday.
Who can hold the knowledge? No, I can't tell you. I won't tell you.
Do you feel absolutely confident based on what you know that
Yes.
that is the truth?
Yes.
And Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that we used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours. Anyway, you may
Stop attacking U.S. forces and waging the war.
So Biden's still promoting this idea
when you weigh the target against the number of civilians inside the hospital, is the operation underway just?
Well, look, we did discuss this, by the way, but we can't let it get out of control. Here's the situation. You have a circumstance where the first war crime is being committed by Hamas by having their headquarters, their military
headquarters
under a hospital.
Headquarters.
And that's a fact. That's what's happened.
That's a fact,
Israel
according
did
to the
not go
President of the
in
United
with a large
States.
number of troops, did not raid, did not rush everything down. They've gone in, and they've gone in with their soldiers carrying weapons or guns.
When you weigh the target against the number of civilians inside the hospital, is the operation?
So remember, headquarters versus like what the actual like findings were. And I guess this is breaking news on this. So here's from a few minutes ago. So apparently this is the big mother lode that now they've found. Okay, this is new. I don't know if anyone's seen this. This is Hamas weapons arsenal found in Shifa hospital garage. The IDF reveals a Hamas weapons stash, including grenades, RPGs, AKs, explosives, ammunition, and more, found at garage on the Al-Shifa hospital complex housing Hamas HQ. So now that they've had a couple days to go in there and bring in God knows what in all these boxes and crates that they've been bringing in there, now in the outside, this is what they found. And I'm sorry, guess what? I don't believe you.
כמות רימונים, RPG, קלצ'ניקוב, אמצעי לחימה ואפילו אמצעים קרים. כל הדברים האלה למרכיבים שכבר ראינו.
We don't even know where this is.
והרכב הזה, זה רכב שהיה כאן, פה בתוך החולים שיפה, ומצאנו. אני רוצה עכשיו להראות לכם את
and this is the kind of thing too, even if this is real, even if they found all of this in some garage in the Al-Shifa hospital complex, which I don't believe, what they describe is a vast tunnel network operations command center that the President of the United States co-signed himself, and the U.S. intelligence community co-signed. We're still just taking them at their word that this was all discovered.
זה הבניין הקטרי שנמצא כאן, אנחנו נמצאים מצפון אליו בתוך הבית חולים. כמו שאתם רואים, של פעילות.
So in the proximity of the hospital, I guess, is where they found this. I mean, it speaks to a whole other thing when they find like weapons caches. Like, let's say this is even real, but it's also just like we're fighting this war, and then when we find the people that we're claiming we need an army to defeat, when they have weapons, that's like some evidence that they're like cheating somehow. But it's like usually that's how wars are supposed to go. You know, the other side has like weapons and stuff, but they find weapons and they're like, this is proof that they're all like evil monsters. It's so fucking weird, you know? Like you're waging war on people. And when you find weapons, it's like, this is exactly why we need to kill 10,000 more civilians. You know, but again, I don't believe that any of this is real. I think they're just lying about all this. So you know, like he's carrying a machine gun. They have tanks and planes and bombs and guns. We had to burn down all those Vietnamese villages because they had to. Some of them had a nail file. Well, there was there was a vast network of VC tunnels under those villages. That's why we had to napalm all those villages. No, I don't buy this at all either. Anyway, I would like to tomorrow take some more time to talk about the President Xi and Biden meeting. I just don't have enough time left today. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, dummy Dorko. Even if it is real, it doesn't change the fact that bombing hospitals is a war crime. I got to get going pretty soon, folks. I got to go in about 13 minutes at the most. So thank you for tuning into the stream today. It's been another great day of conversation, and once again, I feel less insane from all this stuff, from being able to spend time on here speaking to all of you about this. If you can, please subscribe to TRRS. It's $5 a month. It's completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account. Yeah, I got about 13 minutes and a mere 25 subs to go. So if you can, please subscribe to the show. It really helps out a lot. It is the only way that I'm able to continue doing this program every day. There is a merch sale as well going on right now, which I've not talked about enough. I got some more merch. But yeah, if you can, please subscribe. It's the only way that I'm able to keep doing this show each and every day, is if the little number at the bottom of the screen goes up. And we're a minor, measly 25 subs to go. Should be no problem. Should be no problem to get there. There is also merch. That is true.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Comrade Bushy, thank you for the gifted sub. Always coming through, Comrade Bushy. Thank you for that. And now only 24 subs to go to get to the goal. The goal that I must try and reach every day in order to make a small living from doing this program, which many people seem to enjoy and get something out of. Why is that? I don't know. I don't know why it is. Yeah, I mean, one who reads it all helps. It all helps. I just do try and make the number go up to the good number on a daily basis. Lenin's Lament. Hello. Barry. It's our friend Barry. The new chatter. The brand new chatter, known only as Barry. I had to work today at work. It's the worst. I'm sorry to hear that.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds awful. Crackety Kraken, thank you for the gifted sub. How do folks tip outside of Twitch? It's through Streamlabs? Stream Elements, yeah. Barry, I love rib, communism's skateboarding, and hot dogs. Those are all really good things to enjoy. A measly 23 subs left. That's right, Kijiji Genie. A measly 23 subs to go. V from TO. I did absolutely nothing at work today. Is everyone proud of me? I am, yeah. I'm very proud of you. I think that's fantastic. Thank you, one who reads. I appreciate that. We encourage wage theft around these parts. That's right. Our wage theft soldiers. Time theft. No, yeah, we don't encourage wage theft. That's true. Yes. Dr. Austin, that's on you. Okay, you messed me up there. That one's on you. We don't encourage wage theft. We do encourage time theft, though. That's the good kind. That's the good kind. Is it true that they call you the handsome young king? Yeah, that is true, yeah. That's absolutely correct. Many people refer to me as that exact sequence of words. Many are saying this. So fortunately, we've made a bunch of progress, folks, and I'm here another 8 minutes to go, and only 23 subs to go to get to the goal.
We simply
Can you believe that?
use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Hey, handsome young king. Just joining right now. How's it going?
Hello, Joe. Thanks for the 420 friend coin. 420, that's the weed number. It's the weed number. That's so exciting. I feel good about it too, Sean. I feel good about it too. I'm right in the sweet spot right now. It never gets old. No, it does not. No, it does not. But
we simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Rob, revealing the dirty underside of the myth of Canada.
That's right. Thank you, Perilous, for the 420 bits. That's also the weed number.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Kijiji Genie, for gifting a sub to our friend's super obnoxious all caps name. It shouldn't be all left to Kijiji Genie, folks. And now only 22 subs to go. It's barely anything. Let's wrap it up with a quick 20 more. Exactly, Sean. When Close Encounters of the Third Kind said that math was the universal language, I had no idea they meant 420 and 69. And the way 6006 looks like boob. Wouldn't it be 8008?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh my goodness, Barfcast. Barfcast, it's absurd.
It won't make that particular number go up, but still.
Barfcast. Thank you for the $100. That's so kind of you. That's so generous. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Good Lord. And thank you, Breckon, as well for the gifted sub. Very first gifted sub in the channel from Breckon. I really appreciate that, Breckon. Thank you. And thank you, Barfcast, for the incredibly generous donation there. And thank you also to Crackety Kraken for the equally generous 1 bit. I think just donating 1 bit probably does more damage to the environment than like anything actually like being helped. That's worth a 20 sub alert. I feel like I gotta hold back on that. I gotta hold back on the 20 sub alert for when it's for the real thing. But I will say, not only if someone, and I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm not telling anyone what to do. But let's say theoretically, if someone did gift 20 subs right now, it would trigger a totally brand new and very cool and exciting alert. And it would get me almost to the sub goal for today. I don't see the downside. I don't see the downside to that. That seems like a win-win-win. Because we're a mere We're a mere 21 subs away from the goal, and 3 minutes to go should be no problem.
Wow. Okay, Rob. Seriously, wow.
Oh my goodness. Barry. Thank you, Barry. That's so kind of you, Barry. First 10 gifted subs in the chat from our friend, Barry. This new guy's got some real chops. Absolutely. You helped me learn how to communicate these ideas more effectively. Thank you, Super. I'm happy you've been back in the chat the last couple days. We love Barry, don't we, folks? And now a mere 11 subs to go. Only 11 subs to go. And since Barfcast was so unbelievably generous with that donation, and since Dr. Maggot is requesting it, Dr. Maggot, who has also been very, very supportive. Really, I should not do this. Really, I should not do this. Really, I should wait till these moments actually come. How do you even do it? I can't even remember. What happened to the mullet? It is still there. It just, my hair is curly, so it curls up at the back, but it is still there, see? It's hard to tell with this angle. Folks, 11 more subs to go. 11 more subs to go. And because I'm responding to some extremely generous community members, I will play the alert. Really, what I should do is hold off until I get to the goal to play the alert. But Dr. Maggot is right that was a very generous donation from our friend Barfcast. So just this one time, if I can fucking figure out how to do it. I'm trying to. I think they changed the page where you figure it out. Shit. This page has moved. It's not a bit. I actually have to leave. I actually have to leave right now. I have to find someone to raid like right now. I have to go. I just opened my Twitch and I just saw my face going. There's still time, folks. There's another minute. There's 11 subs to go. There's another minute. If you do want to subscribe to this program, if you want to help me meet the goal, I don't understand. I think they changed this since the last. I think they changed the website. I think they changed the website. I'm really genuinely trying to do this. Oh wait, no. Fuck. Okay, I'm gonna do this, okay?
You can count on me.
I told
and
you.
Have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
This is a test.
No, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted. Okay. Because I wanted to stay truthful and be thankful for the incredibly generous donation from our friend Barfcast. Here it is. Okay? No, it was not a bit. It was not a bit. I was trying to figure it out. Okay, here it is. Look at me, I'm Mr. Newsman. I'm such a big deal. Everyone come to me for knowledge. Come to Mr. Newsman.
This is a test.
There. That Barfcast, that was for you, okay? That was for you. You still have another like 30 seconds if you want to subscribe. Oh fuck, I'm so late. I gotta go. Goodbye.